Okay, I will call the meeting of July 11th to order at 6:03. If you do roll call.
Chairman Beecham.
Here.
Vice Chair Shrouden. Here. Board Member Conger.
Here.
And then Board Member Cadwalder and Board Member Crawford are absent.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to excuse their absence.
So moved. I'll support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Next on our agenda is the organization of the board, and I will actually turn that over to Charlie. Because at our first meeting in July every year is the time to reorganize positions at the board.
So we, have two board members get reappointed to new terms effective July 1. We need to get that updated on the website. But with the reappointment, you said every July we're supposed to reorganize the board. Currently, Perry is serving as, well, I guess technically ending June 30th. Perry was serving as the chair of the board. Andrew was serving as the vice chair, but would open up discussion on filling those positions. I know there's been some discussion ahead of the meeting, so I will turn it over to the board for any recommendations or any interest in serving in roles. I guess I can start with Chairman Beecham.
So I have an interest in continuing to serve as the board chair. Again, but that is clearly up to the rest of the board. And then I did earlier in the year, I had a discussion with a couple of board members, Craig and Andrew, and Craig showed an interest in becoming the vice chair, and I talked to Andrew about it, and Andrew at that time was fine with it. I don't want to preclude anything. I will state that sometime in the future, near future, we should probably look at this organization of the board. And the reason why I say that is because there are, if you go to the charter, it doesn't even, there is no reference to a vice chair whatsoever. There's only reference to a chairperson. And so therefore, currently, we in the past, we've designated a vice chair for the sole purpose of running a board meeting if the board chair is not there. Other than that, because the charter doesn't even talk about it, any responsibilities or anything like that. And I think maybe that's an agenda item at some point to look at those types of things. But with that being said, yes, I would like to continue as chairperson.
And I would like to continue to see you as board chairperson.
Thank you.
I would like to throw this out there as we're talking about it. I think if we're going to revisit positions, I think we should officially change the position to chairperson and make all the titles gender neutral. We've done it with line workers, but I think it's something that should happen, especially if we're making additional changes or anything. So.
And once, if I got approved, we were going to make a couple agenda changes just to talk about that, because again, I was reading like the last month's minutes and everything, and it talks about chairman and everything, and again, to be politically correct, we should look at those types of things.
Now, speaking of the charter, does it say anything about Lowell Lake Power Board size? Because I know it's been expanded over
So
the years.
it was originally in the charter, it was 3 people.
Mhm.
And again, I couldn't tell you the exact date, but quite a few years ago, we changed it. Greg Canfield was the board chair at the time, and we looked at it, and again, when we do, to change charter rules, it has to be a vote of the public, of the people. So it's not something that you do.
Right, willy-nilly or
Yeah,
even
so,
through
but
the
it-
council. or-
It was voted at one of the elections to go to a 5-member board, which I think is very appropriate. I know there are some that have larger. I found that once you get too large of organization voters, then it bogs things down. The opposite is when we had 3, if I and somebody else were on the street and had any kind of conversation, we would be in violation of the Opens Meeting Act. And then the other is, if I wanted to railroad something, or my opinion, or somebody else's, all I had to do is get one person to agree with it, and that was, that was it. So I think, I like the 5-member board. So, I mean, I heard what you both said, but what we need to do is we actually need to have a motion and a second, and then we'll vote on it.
So, motion to, I guess, nominate Perry as the board chairperson.
Support?
Okay? Well, I'm gonna let you, because I'm
I
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'm used to,
You're fine. I wasn't gonna say anything. Well, I got food in my mouth. Not used to talking this early in the meeting. I used to finish my meal. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
okay, now I'll run.
Now you are officially chairperson.
Now, vice chair, would need to nominate, same thing, nomination.
Yeah, I think Robert's rules in a situation like this, I think it does allow you to actually, and I know you don't like to practice that,
Right.
I think. So.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
kind of gonna have to
Yeah.
here, because we're short 2 members, so.
Yep. So, assuming you are still interested in being vice chair,
Indeed, I am.
okay, I will nominate you then as vice chair.
And I
Since
would,
I know you definitely have a lot of interest and you're very eager, and I think you got more time to devote to it than I can. And so, for whatever a vice chair is worth, you know what?
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean,
I think,
you know, I think
I'd like to see
just
someone
it-
that can actually dive in more than I'm able to.
yeah, and that's the thing, I'm able to, go out into the community and interact more. And I think just having the title just has a little bit more gravitas to it than just general board member, so.
so with that, I would support that nomination. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carried.
So what you're saying is that right now, the only role of the vice chairperson is to shorten a meeting?
But I understand, I was absent a while ago. It went quite a long time. I mean, I think it was the last meeting where I slipped of the tongue, and we opened the meeting and I closed it.
I was gonna say, before you had the shortest
That's
before
right.
meeting ever.
So,
Perry,
Perry, there's a comment, because I've been trying to get this on the city council. I believe anybody that's on the board should be able to learn how to run a meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been trying to get Mike DeVore to get up there and have everybody sit in and at least run a meeting. So I know we haven't been done it in a while, at least for the city, the Robert's rules. So I don't know when the next time that comes up again. But I think everybody should be able to come in and sit in there and take it over and run a meeting, at least learn it.
Good point. I think when we discussed this before, remember, years ago or something, that the benefit of having at least a vice chair, even if there's nothing in the, charter about it, It's just that if, like, Harry's unexpectedly not here, and we're not like squabbling over who's gonna do what, it's just, okay, I do it, or Craig does it, and if they don't want to, they can give it to someone else, but at least there's something there that says, hey, it's not Perry, somebody else.
Right. And unfortunately, you have to prepare for
Mhm.
the worst cases. You know, and you need an automatic succession plan for something as important as the chairperson of a board. So,
Mhm.
you know, obviously, we hope that never comes to it, but like you said,
Yeah.
you don't want people doing this, or everybody
Yeah,
doing
just
this
make
is
it
worse. Everybody doing this is worse than everybody doing this.
Yeah, it makes it less awkward,
Yeah.
if there's something on paper that,
And I started looking at some language in other documents. A lot of where they incorporate the roles is a little different, so I'll pull together and present some other structures that are used if we're gonna continue to formalize the position more.
Okay, and I can just talk about some of these things when we get done with the board comments. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda
So move.
as presented.
I'll support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. We have 2 sets of minutes to approve. Our June 13th regular board meeting, open session.
Do we need to excuse the instances of,
We did.
We did, yes.
oh, we did that?
Yeah, you seconded it.
We did it, we actually did it, we did it back
I was
in,
thinking of the agenda, or the,
no, we did it back at roll call,
yeah, I
and,
remember now.
and
Yeah.
Charlie, ran that.
Yeah, I'm all discombobulated.
Fair enough. I understand.
Nope, so, do we have a support, or excuse me, a motion to accept the regular board meeting, open session?
I'll motion to approve the regular meeting minute.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. June 13th, regular board meeting, the closed session portion of it.
I'll move, motion to approve the closed session minutes.
And,
Support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. The public comment, we currently do not have, only have employees and board members and a liaison from the city. So we'll move on to action items.
All right, fiscal year 2023 write-off for fiscal year ending June 2022. And I will hand this over to Megan to deliver some more good news.
Well, I think we said it last year that we couldn't get any lower, but we got lower, so don't think we're gonna do it next year.
Oh, that's not the right attitude.
I don't think it's gonna happen.
Oh, yes, it is.
So that's what you said last year.
I know, but
I mean, at some point. I kind of prefaced last year, nope, next year's gonna be next year, we'll say it again this year. Next year, don't expect improved results.
But if
we
it
really
is,
need it this year.
Yeah, this was serious this year.
But yeah, $210.46 is, I mean, unreal. We are very, very lucky to have the customer service staff that we do. Hillary does a fantastic job at following up with customers and staying up on, promise to pays, and, I mean, they all do, but Hillary is, the main one who does that, so. Yeah, we're obviously incredibly happy with that number, so. Not much else to say about that, but.
I'd say, there's not a whole lot of conversation that needs to be had about a less than $300 write-off on almost $10 million in revenue.
write
so.
a check for a ferry and have zero.
Well, I'm saying, it's like, I think one time Steve had something that their budget was within 1 cent or something, and it was like, there you go. Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve write-offs of, where are we?
Oh, what?
200.
Right there.
$10.
$210.46.
Go ahead.
So moved.
I'll support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Before we go on with that, I just commend the office staff. It's just phenomenal. And it all has to do with the office staff. And I know we talk about that we're a great organization from the top down, but you can't exemplify how important, we talk about, or at least I do, our linemen and how we keep things running and everything, and they're an integral part of low light and power. But when it comes to rates, customers, you just can't get any better than what our office staff is. And this number represents their hard work, represents with their efforts, they are keeping our cost to all of our ratepayers down, because if we were writing off, and one time, many years ago, we were writing off $10,000 a year, and somebody has to pay for that, and who has to pay for that is our remaining ratepayers. So this is, I just can't say enough great things about our office staff and the people that get it done this way. And I think it can happen again. I think they're devoted and professional. They are so professional in our office that it will not surprise me if this number is lower next year. It will not surprise me at all.
If we're gonna talk about how awesome office staff is, I'll chime in. I'm biased, obviously, but I challenge anybody to show a stronger office staff I think it's the strongest office staff, strongest team White Power's ever had as an organization. Granted, I'm biased, and it's the only team I've ever really known, but even since I've been here 2.5 years, I think the other thing to keep in mind is collectively, if you take Megan and Julie away from the office, the other 3 remaining women in the office have a total of less than 7 years experience in the utility industry. They do work better than people who've been in the industry for 30 years. I know it, I've had a lot of people work for me in the office setting. It's what I did at previous communities. The office administrative staff fell under my direction. I will put our office staff, which I know a little closer with and have more to compare, put them up against anybody. You all, and I wish I could highlight everything that they do, but there's little things, efficiency projects, things that, the creativity, the critical thinking skills, and the commitment to excellence amongst every one of them is something that should be highlighted. So I can't miss the opportunity to talk about good things if you're gonna start opening the door. So I'll barge through. So sorry, go ahead.
If anybody else want to comment, you can, or you can when we get down to board comment. I didn't want to wait for board comment. I just think it's very important that they know how much we appreciate them.
And I think it's pretty evident how dedicated everyone is. We see it in the office, we see it out in the field, and as Tina says, we have the dream team, and I have to agree with that.
And I've been amazed to this number for several years. You know?
I was gonna say, this number was really impressive, but the numbers leading up to it were impressive as
I
well.
know. Like under 1,000 is impressive.
And I don't know if I butchered the math or not, I think I did. We are, you know, if you look at all utility averages by our revenue, we don't just beat the average by a little bit, by tens of thousands of dollars.
It's just that the average is like 0.66.
0.66.
We're at 0.0235.
Yeah.
So we're like,
I mean, if
what,
you do
100th or something?
Yeah, if you do 9 million times
Is that
0.0066,
right? Like 1,300?
it's almost $60,000 is the,
Average.
it would be the average for a utility our size. Granted, we never want to be average. But to beat average by that much is a people-based solution, not, there's processes involved and there's support from the board for approving policies that ensure financial security and give us the tools to do and enforce what we need. But ultimately, it's a reflection of the people.
So, yeah, so 9 years ago, what we wrote off was what, like an eighth of the average. And we're writing off something that's like what, 20th of that?
Yeah.
Our whole total that was already at 8.
Steve had these numbers, there's too many decimals, and Steve has to come back and do that back.
Okay, it's just phenomenal, and it's all about the employees in the office. And I say that, but I will tell you that, and you might get into it later, the line workers have their backs. They have the line workers' backs. I mean, it's just phenomenal. So with that, let's move on to informational items.
I'm going to quickly turn this over to Ryan. We're going to just talk through a little bit. I want to keep the board informed. We talked about East Side Feed project is coming up. We've got contractors coming out. We've also done Ryan's planned a series of, I don't remember exactly how many we've got slated, 4 or 5, maybe 6 smaller, what we're calling satellite projects that off the East Side Feed, essentially
to hold Russia
right in behind and
Russia's ability
in line
to conduct
with
this
the
war.
contractors.
I know it sometimes gets tiresome.
Yeah,
It seems like
in line with the contractors, the crews are going out and replacing some poles, and we're starting to do some of the work on the side streets so we can leverage the new circuit coming in that the contractor's doing, so we can start immediately using some of the new voltage, the 12470, the upgraded voltage, to start cutting houses over, start eliminating, we'll start eliminating some of those services being fed from the 4160 side, but before we did any of that, needed to get some poles replaced and get some transformers in the air, so that's what they're working on. Now, Ryan, I'll turn it over to you while you're getting ready. That was your introduction.
Yeah, we were able to pick out 2 or 3, actually 5 different locations that we kind of designed the project. And they're all taps off of this main line that's along North Street. So this line that you see where there's 2 sections of spacer cable is the stuff that Newkirk is going to be replacing for us, starting at Lafayette all the way down north, all the way down Jackson Street. So we figured this is going to be done at some point here in the next couple of months once they start, so we might as well take advantage of using it and using the new voltage in any pole change out projects that we need to do. First one that we picked was the ones along Monroe Street. There's 2 spans going this way. These 2 poles are gonna be changed out, everything upgraded. They'll be relocated a little bit to kind of center them up on lot lines, so it kind of doesn't necessarily put it on one person's property or the other. It's not necessarily on their property because it's in that green space between the sidewalk and the curb, but it just kind of doesn't directly locate it in the middle of someone's front yard that way by moving them just slightly a little bit.
And if you, to add on a little bit, if you look at old pictures of Lowell, like the picture that's in my office, there'd be like 3 houses on a block. And I think what's happened is these poles are so old, you know, lots have been subdivided, so things that used to be on a lot line may now be in the middle, or, you know, things that used to be in a more convenient place are now directly in front of houses, because they've added houses in along the way. And this is some very old infrastructure.
Yeah, the cross-arm style construction on these particular poles, what in the world? This computer has been giving me trouble with the internet over here for some reason. But anyways, the cross-arms will no longer be up there. That is construction style, it's old school, it's no longer needed. We'll keep the pole just a vertical, nice, clean, pole top pin style insulator at the very top of the pole for the energized conductor, and just keep things neat and trim and tidy. And most of the thought process for starting on Monroe Street first with these projects was we were hoping that we were going to be able to get all these poles changed out and work along the street at the same time that the street is being worked on, so that we didn't come in later when the pavement's brand new and set up our trucks on it and disturb everything all over again. And it's looking like we're going to accomplish that. We have every pole set except for these 2. We did not do these 2 yet because the contractor was right in there working on pavement removals. But everything starting at this point, this takeoff pole, you can see where it heads up and goes north. We have all of the poles set all the way up the northern section. There's, I believe there was 14 new poles up this way.
That was one of the bigger satellite projects, wasn't it?
Yep.
I noticed that a lot of those poles that were north of Grant Street on North Monroe were looking kind of wonky and, yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna put them up there.
Yeah.
There's some older infrastructure over there. Or there was.
So, starting at North Street, stopping right here at this location, right across from Pine Street, the conductor style, and it's kind of hard to tell, but you can tell the conductor is I mean, I know it because I've looked at things like this millions of times. This is a coated conductor. It's kind of like, they call it tree wire.
Tree wire.
And it's really good. We're leaving it there. The conductor going the other way is old. It's a bare, really, really small copper. So we're going to change this stuff out all the way up to the last pole, way up the road, just before we get to Fremont. But also, there's this span right here where it jumps across the road at an angle to this pole, low on the cross arm, and then angles back across the road to this other one. We're going to eliminate that crossing. We needed to do it fairly quickly, and I think we're going to get after it before the backhoe or the excavator gets back up there again, because this was so low. That big old unit had a little bit of difficulties getting down through there to wreck out the pavement. So we're going to just move a pole over this way and then straighten this whole thing out, and then add new conductor all the way through that whole section, so it's really nice and clean.
I'm gonna guess it probably crossed the road, because at one point, there's probably a huge tree.
I was gonna say,
right there.
I think, and if you go back a little bit, they had to do some trimming here, didn't you, on that tree?
This tree right here, this guy was so thrilled that we asked him if we could take it down. He was like, oh my gosh, I've been so scared of that tree, so we were planning on removing that one as well. Not positive if we got to it yet. I haven't been up that way because I just didn't want to get in the road and get in the way of the construction guys up there, but that is the plan. This one was removed because of the upcoming road work, and it was dying, and it was not in a good spot for the sidewalk and the curb, and the new sewer. No, I think it's the water main on this side was really tight to the curb, and they were gonna end up killing it anyways, so it needed to go down.
Is what you're putting on that, is it a Hendrix line?
Nope, we're just gonna do the same kind of construction of the pole top pin style, vertical construction, kind of like this pole, which is amazing to me because we changed this out about 2 months ago because
Is
this
that-
transformer needed to be replaced, and Google Maps has already driven down through there and photographed that
I
thing.
see May 23 on there.
Where do you see that?
Kind of
Oh,
amazing.
image capture, wow. I thought that, I looked through it, I thought that looked like it was the new pole.
If you go down the road any farther, then it goes back to the old pole, which is really weird, because now, here's what it used to look like. It was really old, really janky, and this transformer was overloaded anyway, so it just needed to be replaced, and now it's done.
Yeah, so when Ryan and I talked about construction methods and how we wanted to do this, there's talk of, when we brought up in previous board meetings, why isn't it underground? There's a myriad of reasons why it's not, cost being one of them, but the infrastructure in the ground and the age of the infrastructure, age of, the houses and everything, it just wasn't conducive. So what we did was look at how can we effectively go overhead without jeopardizing significant, the reliability aspect. And we talked a lot of Hendrix, but with the mature trees there, you don't see the growth on the mature trees that causes the problems, and they're going with taller poles, more clearance. It's just a more maintainable stretch and a more maintainable area from a tree perspective, especially if you compare it to dock addition that we did go underground. Differences being dock addition was all rear lot lines, very difficult to replace poles, very difficult to ensure reliability. And the trees were a major issue, and it was a challenge to get to the trees. You couldn't even get to them to trim them to replace. So it wasn't I guess necessarily comparing apples to apples in terms of the situation. It was a strategic decision to go with this construction. It wasn't a hey, this is just the way it's done. It was a proactive approach to trying to determine how we could most effectively deliver reliable electric and maintain affordability throughout the project. So that's some of the additional background behind the construction methods there.
Ryan,
Interrupt.
I said, do you coordinate then with Comcast and the phone company to come back and re-hook their lines to the new poles?
How is your?
If it's a location that is not just a really super simple, easy transfer, like this one right here is a super simple,
Yeah.
just a 1 volt straight through, easy
You gotta do
transfer, we'll just take care of it and be done with it, because it would take 6 or 7 months and headaches to get them out there to do it. And if there's some with a riser and lots of things and dead ends and angles or something like that, then yeah, I got a couple different contacts that we drop stuff on, and they are actually pretty responsive, but it's quicker just to be done with it and just get it transferred.
I think that is something that it's a good topic to talk about, because I think it's potentially a source of frustration for residences. Because they could see our stuff get eliminated from a pole, and I don't know if we cut the top out of the pole and leave it, or what exactly we do, but we don't have the ability or the authority to guarantee transfers. And when you're talking with AT&T and Comcast, Comcast being probably more receptive and probably a little easier working relationship, I'm speaking for you a little bit, but knowing the relationship and the history we've had with some of the telecoms, it can be a very challenging process to get them out to do the transfers, and it's tough, especially with AT&T.
And what do you think, you got maybe 8 or 9 people still using phone lines on?
Exactly. They don't want to
500 pair of cable?
It's not
invest in their
That's what I was
copper
gonna say.
infrastructure anymore.
I know.
No.
Yep.
And another thing, on this side of town, we don't own every pole on this side of
Oh,
town.
we don't, okay.
There are a lot of Michigan Bell poles on this side of town. We are limited in our ability to have any control over certain poles. So I think there's some expectation setting.
How do I want to ask this question? Are we, where possible, trying to separate ourselves from?
It depends.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends. Nobody wants 2 poles in their yard for what one can do.
Right.
But yes, I mean, the goal is to coordinate how to do things best. And we talk offline a little bit, because there's some contractual, there's some contractual language that, but there are contractual challenges to certain things. I'd be happy to, it's some really riveting conversation, but I'd be happy to do it.
just 1 minute. Would just like to make note for the camera, of course, that's our means of recording. Board person, Tina Cadwalder, is here at 6:32.
Another good reason for changing out all these poles, it's not a dire situation, but you can tell that this one right here is fairly aged. I mean,
That's a really generous way of putting it. That thing's old as dirt.
you got the max out of this one, I guess I would say.
Paid it off last year.
This guy right here, when the contractor was doing the digging along this area, it was only about 2 foot in the ground of good wood. All the rest was rotted away and it actually started to try to tip over, so we had to replace this one while they were out there working on it.
And just for reference, standard depth of a pole is 10% of the pole plus 2 feet.
Yeah, it should
So
be.
a 35-foot pole should be a solid 5.5 foot in the ground. So 2 feet of support is literally not enough for people.
It's the wires that are holding it up.
That thing had its busy over there.
Do you guys wood chip up those poles or no?
You what?
Do you guys?
Chip them up? No, they
do.
You have to dispose of the property because of how they're treated, I believe.
No, there's not really a lot of treatment left in them that's
Oh, yeah.
dangerous, but there's gonna be metal in any city, any pole that's along the street is never gonna get chipped up where
1,000 nails are in it.
it's really sketchy to even put a chainsaw on it without even really inspecting it, because anywhere from the ground level up to as high as somebody can reach, it's gonna be a box of nails, yes. And then you got pull down staples and all kinds of other things up them. You really have to be careful. No, definitely not chipping. If somebody tried to put one of them through the chipper, boy, I don't know,
How do
they
we
may not be
dispose
around
of
here
it?
anymore.
That's a good question.
How do we dispose of them?
Usually there's a list of people that want them.
Okay.
So it's not a problem getting rid of them. The local farmers, they want them for fence posts and all kinds of other things. Some of the guys take them home. I've taken a couple of old cedars home just because it's actually really, really good kindling.
Okay.
And there's no treatment and stuff above the ground. It's old cedars. Burns just like a newspaper. It's fast.
Okay. I didn't know that. At least they're not going to a landfill.
No, I could show you pictures of my house in Lake Odessa, and the whole entire place is redesigned and resited, the cedar boards sawed out of old poles.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
That's a
Timber
pretty-
frame construction on the porch, I mean, the whole thing. I mean, when we moved to the house that we're in now, we decided we weren't doing any more wood stuff because we had a fill of that over. Yeah, so that's the overall plan of what we're doing. There's 4 or 5 more projects, there's one down Washington Street, there's a couple different little sections on Jefferson as well that are exactly the same thing and described the same way as what we just did this one. So it's gonna be some really, really good improvements over there.
Okay.
Yeah, and the other satellite project is not necessarily a pole change out conductor replacement is, just today, we ordered all of the pipe. We're in the process, I'm not sure if the PO is officially issued today, but we agreed to this piece here. Ryan, you want to dive into that just a touch?
Yeah, so there's a vault right here, where it comes under the river from a directional bore shaft from right here all the way over that we already have pipe right now in the ground. So we need to finish the underground portion all along Division Street that you see right here, and then it's gonna hit a riser pole, a brand new pole that Newkirk's gonna be setting right here, and then it'll come up overhead. A little bit of this line down Front Street will be rebuilt, and then it'll jump across onto the east side of Jackson, and then that's where our main circuit, our tie line, the stuff that Newkirk's building goes all the way up Jackson and then hits North Street and goes over to Lafayette. This is what they're gonna be doing this real soon. Actually, the pole truck should be out there right now dumping poles off at both of the sites where we want poles.
So, just so the board is aware, what we're looking to do is that wire that we need to put in the ground, our cost, it went from under a $100,000 expensive material to almost $200,000 in the last 2 years.
$21 a foot.
$21 a foot, we need about, it's just under $200,000 worth of wire. So that's gonna be a very large percentage of our capital budget for next year. The lead times are very long, and I still don't even understand what,
have to put it underground?
this we need to put underground
Yeah.
because it's in the floodplain.
Yeah.
It's not that it's in the floodplain, it's other stuff's in the floodplain. I asked the same question, can we save some money? Can we save money, can we stretch our money and make a bigger impact with the same dollars? So we're gonna spend the dollars on something. That's how our capital budget works, but through there's a lot of fear of when the river gets up. It's a main tie line, so if the river gets up and logs or ice jams or anything come through there, you damage brand new infrastructure. And it hit that piece.
So it is, okay, yeah,
That-
it's
that-
for underground,
Yeah,
there.
that place, that section, we do not feel like we can provide the same reliability overhead as we can underground. That's why, we talk about strategically going overhead, underground, strategic and construction methods. This is a good example of, we're choosing that, yes, we need to go underground for this section because of very real operational reasons, not just, everybody wants to see things underground. I mean, it's a natural thing. Let's get them underground. And in most cases, yeah, if you can, great, but other thing on this section, there are no homes. One of the biggest hangups that we have with doing the whole east side underground is the potential hundreds of thousands of dollars that we have to invest in. We either force on customers to upgrade their stuff, or we would have to use ratepayer funds to make improvements to personal property. And granted, if there is a operational justification for making that investment, then yeah. But we've got some ideas that we've kicked around on how to further facilitate additional undergrounding of services on that side of town, because that's really where you run into your reliability challenges. And Ryan, you speak to this better than me, but the big winter storm where we sent crews down to Hillsdale, when the IOUs were testifying in front of the MPSC, I think it was DTE CEO said almost half of their restoration efforts. So the first 7 days were getting main lines, medium voltage distribution lines up in the air. The next 7 days were one service at a time. So your services that last from transformer to the house can really cause a lot of difficulties from a reliability standpoint from a major weather event. So, but that section there is why we are going underground there. But the plan is going to be to place an order sometime during this year, this fiscal year. It'll be board action to place the order because it's a hefty purchase.
On the PGA Tour.
But the plan will be have it delivered in the next fiscal year. So that late next summer, the pipe will be in the ground, the tie line will be completed, cross over into the new fiscal year, get it delivered July, August, and get the wire pulled in, get wire pulled into that conduit so we can finish that run out. And it sticks to that schedule of approximately a 6-month delay that we put in place when material prices and everything went through the roof.
This is irrelevant, but I guess more of inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah.
So, and it makes sense to be underground in that floodplain and everything. If we were putting a line in and it was going above ground and poles, do we have to get permits from Eagle and all that kind of stuff? I'm asking that because in the trails where we're putting some, the need to put some walking bridges and everything, what Charlie was talking about is you can't impede the flow of the water, the river, like you said, like big logs coming down and takes out a pole because of the force of the water and everything, and it was just, curiosity was just kind of,
Not that I know of, we don't need to, no, as long as we're not setting them in the middle of a river or something like that, yeah. And it's not gonna, erode the bank when you're setting the pole there or something and cause damage.
yeah. But like, so through Stony Lakeside Park and everything where they've determined that, it's not in the river, but there's the water flow and everything, we have to meet all these standards and everything.
There's a lot of water moving back there when it gets up high, I mean,
Yeah.
comes up and goes back down, and a lot of flow.
So we just wanted to inform the board, kind of give a little more detail on the scope of the work that you'll see. To kind of talk through a little bit more of what is happening behind the scenes with this project. Ryan is working with some of the office staff to go essentially from a door-to-door personal communication to every resident along that pole route, or most of the residents, the affected residents. I don't say everybody, because if a wire is just going by your house and it doesn't change anything, I don't know if there's an intention to talk to them, but.
Pretty much everybody on the south side of North Street and the east side of Jackson are going to get talked to just because it directly affects their front yard somehow a little bit.
Jim, we're counting on you.
I'm on the north
I'm saying,
side.
we're counting on you knowing what's going on anyways.
I talked to a few of the neighbors when they saw those trucks surveying what was happening. They thought they were already gonna fix the streets, and I said, no, this is.
And
the big
this is
power
progress.
lines coming through.
And I
This is
was
something that's gonna get done.
tongue in cheek when he was saying that these trucks, Newkirk's gonna be on Jackson Street and everything. I've had, in the last week, some business that I've had to do up on Grindle. And, because I heard it today. When's somebody that lives up in the township, when's Riverside? That is the worst guy, he drives it and I said, well, I found one that I think is worse than Riverside. And that's North Jackson.
I drive down it. I try not to, but I have to. I have to.
Yeah,
I drove by-
Washington is a close second.
But
Monroe is
Torn up. Jackson is scheduled.
Huh?
This 2025 Jackson is scheduled, that is in the master street plan approval.
Oh,
Washington next year, then Jackson.
one's
Randall's getting done pretty soon, they
This year.
just approved,
Yeah.
bids came in lower, $50,000, $60,000 less, so that's another subject, so let's move on with our meeting here.
So, from a communication standpoint, I know there's been some questions. We've written up some frequently asked questions, potential questions that customers might ask. Everybody in the office will have that, and what we're really doing, and I appreciate Ryan, is we're funneling any real question to Ryan. He's super available and does a fantastic job building relationships with customers. I think it's not just a informational type of session when Ryan's out there talking with them. It's about them understanding the why and understanding how we approach things philosophically. So it's bigger than just, hey, there's going to be a pole here, there's going to be an anchor here. We're not going over, or we're going overhead because of this. It's how does it fit into the bigger scheme? What are we doing? What's the benefit to them? And it gives them the opportunity to really engage in what it's the tactics that we use. The proverbial they do,
We all do.
to effectuate positive relationships about tree trimming, about new lines. It's the personal touch. What I guess we would ask is if you are all asked questions, please obviously talk with the customers, work with them. But if you get in a position where they want to really dive in across the board, whether that's people in the office answering phones, they get to that point. We're just funneling questions to Ryan because I personally I'd like him to have the opportunity to build those relationships with some of our customers. Obviously, you all are going to be asked what's going on. You're going to be asked certain questions. If there's anything we can do to help. One of the reasons we're doing this is just to make sure you all are aware. So you got some more of the details behind it because I know you're over on that side of town, you're over on that side of town, you're over on that side of town. Barry, you're another side of town, or you're on the good side of town, it sounds like, with the office. The old school, this side versus that side. But you all are over there. You live in that part of the community. You know the people that are going to be impacted. We want you all to definitely be educated, informed on what we're doing, but also don't want you to feel like you have to be the spokesperson for the nuts and bolts, the operational side of the project. Because that's all, a lot of times that's what they want to know.
Is the website going to be updated immediately on frequently asked questions?
We're not planning to
Immediately.
We're not planning to put those out. It's more of an internal tool. But we have contingency plans, because I don't want customers reading answers. I like to have conversations with our staff. We have plans in place that if there's, because the other thing is to find out they're on the website, they're gonna call. I don't think people don't traffic our website for information, tend to. It's purpose driven.
Okay, because I drive people to your website.
Oh, hey, that'd be great.
I do.
Yeah.
And when I get those questions, I tell them straight, what's on the website? So I haven't had to do that recently, but I have done that in the past if we had like a storm or what have you, because I asked you about that before too. If there's a storm going on and there's outages, it would be very helpful so that I'm at work and I could fire it up and get a launch, show them where it's at.
Even Facebook
In the end, it's
also is another
Yes.
more
Oh, God,
immediate.
Facebook.
Yeah, so what we have some plans in place.
To another.
Yeah, we have the document, we're paring it down
Okay, gotcha.
So that we can.
to be digestible, and we're gonna see what kind of questions we get. We think, a lot of the questions are gonna be answered by one-on-one interactions, when Ryan's knocking on doors. Because most customers are not gonna be directly impacted. And it's not like the road project where the road's ripped up and it's gonna be ripped up for, I don't know what the time frame is, but if you live on Washington right now, you're impacted and you'll be impacted for the duration of the project. For us, the impact tends to be, hey, we need to cut your power off for an hour so we can change out this
It's
pole.
not that big of an impact.
It's more localized impacts and shorter duration and immediate impacts on just the pole instead of, Jim probably isn't gonna know where even the crews are working down. If you're in the house or you're golfing or, it won't have a day-to-day impact. Where if you live on Washington, every day you leave, every day you come, there's trucks up and down where this is more of a progress. They're gonna change this pole out, then we're gonna change this pole out, and while they're there, they'll be impacted. But once they move on, it's kind of just another normal day. I think more than anything, it will be inquisitive minds. Hey, what are you doing? Those type of
You can make
things.
those adjustments, because if you do see a wave of questions of people kind of losing their minds over this,
Absolutely.
then you can, the great thing about the Facebook and your website is you can make adjustments quickly.
And Emily does a great job of that. We have kind of contingency plans in case we got, potentially information in the ledger that we talked about putting out there. So we have communication. We had an East Side communication meeting to pull in Emily, to pull in Ryan, me, everybody involved, and we talked through kind of our different communication strategies. And a lot of them are contingency plans. We have things in waiting. If they're
At the
The
beginning
playbook's
of the
there.
day, this is all gonna be pretty light impact on our customers.
very much so.
The only inconvenience I'll have is when they park a big truck right in front of my driveway to change it, but I will just drive on my grass like I normally do and go out to the corner.
Your wife loves it when you do that.
She doesn't mind, it's my lawn. I take care of it. I'm responsible for outdoors, she's indoors.
Okay.
That's how it works.
I don't know if that's politically correct.
That's fine, that's how it is in my house too, so.
One day it's not detailed.
So you mentioned Ryan going face to face and all that. I guess I'm curious, do you think it has any impact on like bill collection and write-offs and all that? Like over time, if hey, their interaction is positive,
I don't-
that when they're in you know, when they're having issues, that it's easier for them to say, hey, we work with these people, they're nice.
I don't know if I can necessarily draw a direct connection, but yes, you're getting at exactly why, you know, it's that relationship building thing. There's a lot of long-term benefits of having a relationship, more than just I'm an electric provider, you know, I send you a bill, you send me a check relationship. You know, we are our community's utility, so we want them to feel engaged. An engaged customer feels connection to the utility, and then you get, you know, benefits down the road of strong customer engagement, whether that's through bad debt write-off or collections or late penalties or auto pay adoption, you know, so it's an opportunity to build a relationship and really build a relationship on trust and a mutual benefit, because
It's way better having that one-on-one communication versus the bill stuffer that says, oh, we're doing this upgrade down blah, blah, blah streets, and people just throw that in the trash and don't even think much of it. But when you stand right there and talk with them and answer their questions and hand them a business card and tell them if there's any problems, any issue at all, call me right away at the cell number.
They feel so seen
It's
and important
huge.
as a citizen.
Yep.
And heard.
Yep.
and it's the thing that separates, it's the opportunity to leverage our size to provide a better alternative, a better service than the alternative. Because the service isn't, you know, we all believe in our service. Affordability, reliability, we believe in it. But I also believe in the personal connection to the community.
I do too.
So,
Yeah.
I agree with you
But-
fully,
but
but
yeah.
there are people that do work a different shift.
And that's where, so not only will they talk to people, they'll leave door tags, asking for phone calls, they'll leave business cards
It's not like you're
indoors.
gonna wipe out a whole street for 3 or 4 hours, or what are you doing?
They're gonna do it all tomorrow.
Are you gonna do it all the time, Tony?
I mean, I started the other day, but
It's our culture.
I wanted to make sure someone went along. If
We
anybody's
did
home,
knock on my door, do you know what door to go to?
you aren't affected.
I'll tell you what, you take out that pole out of that, at the end of my driveway, bravo. Bravo, I didn't even notice it was gone, it was seamless, it was just beautiful. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Ryan.
I'm gonna boogie, if you can do the outage report, it's fairly minor,
Yep, we're good.
that's good, I appreciate
Thank you.
that.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you for making popcorn.
Guaranteed to have popcorn. I bet we
Yeah,
spend more on
yes.
popcorn than most utilities. But I think most utilities spend zero.
That's where the savings and where that goes, right?
All right, you can roll on it. Make it from your mouth if you want to dive in.
On which?
Just keep,
Strategic.
yeah. So strategic plan workshop, we don't really have much of an update, provided a written update there. It was kind of an uneventful last session. The next session is this Thursday. But we're starting to talk about customer segment groups and SWOT analysis and things like that. So maybe a little more detailed update next, but the last time was really just, the last session was more a follow-up and review of what other utilities had developed in terms of a mission, vision, and values, where we had that conversation. There's things, we talked about that during the last meeting. The last strategic plan session was more just a recap from each utility, and it was very insightful to see the other utilities and how they're approaching this. And we are in a quite a bit different spot that we have an existing strategic plan to build from, where the other participants are really building from the ground up. So some of this preliminary work is more, I'd say, more of a heavy lift for them, because they're building from the ground up, where we've got some stuff in place that we regularly get feedback on. So,
But I'd say that I thought several of them were it was very interesting to me how they were approaching it. And again, we will have slides from that we'll be able to share with the rest of the board. Because, as you're watching and going, oh, I didn't think of it like that. And then also, it sparks thoughts of, oh, that's pretty good the way they're, doing that.
So we'll move on to the MERS annual evaluation. Tried to put it in a memo, kind of some highlights. There's a lot of pages there. Couple things I wanted to highlight. Overall funding actually increased with overall funding percentage increased for the entire plan. Unfortunately, that is probably largely attributed to a death. That's I always hate talking about pensions and a pension liability because of the relationship between an untimely death and funding percentages, and it makes me uncomfortable, but that is one of the reasons that we saw an actual increase overall. That's on page 6. Page 18 kind of breaks down each individual. We scroll to 18. Sorry, Megan. It lays out each individual division right here. So one of the things you'll notice, and we talked about the light power division is our main division at 56.1% funded. I did not write down what it was last year on a per division level. But one of the things I wanted to highlight is the HA, which is the hybrid division. We were funded at like 120, 130%. We moved the overfunded amount to the surplus division to get us back to 100% funding, and then the market tanked basically. So that's where that dip is. But those funds it's $38,000. Stand up. It's $38,000 in an unfunded liability here. But theoretically, if we wanted, we could take $38,104 out of this, move it up here, and we could move that to fully funded, because that's what that surplus division does. It's our savings, basically. Does not count towards our required minimum contributions on an annual basis. I'm not concerned with that at all, because we'll essentially amortize that remaining unfunded liability over the next 17 years. Is it 2039 or 2040 that they amortize? I can't remember, 39 maybe, but that'll just get funded over the remainder of the duration. And it will actually help us by moving those funds here. It'll help expedite the funds or expedite the funding of the overall liability. So if you look at ours, we are the light power division, obviously, the HA division, and then the S2 surplus division. And if you'll notice, that is only associated with our two divisions, and that's how MERS segments what is city money and what's light and power money. But the overall funding really didn't dip. Ours didn't dip too bad as a overall funding percentage for light and power. We're sitting right at 61.1% combined. Last year we were at 61.5. So we didn't make up any ground, but the big thing when there's a tank in the stock market is not losing too much ground. So from a funding standpoint, I feel pretty good with where we're sitting, especially with the additional money that we're contributing to that surplus division on a monthly basis now that we've rolled into the new fiscal year. Any questions or comments or anything on MERS? I know it's a riveting topic. Everybody loves actuarials.
It sounds like it's all being handled. We're on top of it.
We're moving forward, and we're moving forward. We're not going to fully fund the pension in the next couple of years, but we're on a good roadmap to have it funded ahead of when MERS tells us we have to have it funded. So we'll never be done contributing. Well, not never. Eventually we will. Not during anybody's time and their involvement with light and power will we finish making pension contributions. So I should clarify. The only other thing I'll say from a MERS standpoint, I might have put it in the manager's memo, I don't remember. We are working through the details with MERS on adding the 1% 457 match that was one of the outcomes from the union negotiations. So, and with that, next month we will also be coming back and asking for policy changes across the board. So those changes that were negotiated during union negotiations will transfer over to the full company. So, other than that, that's all I have for the MERS evaluation. So this first slide is not going to be, and the performance data is not going to be in your board packet. So we're working on graphs.
What is that?
It's new. So one of the things that we're running into, Megan and I have worked, mostly Megan has done the work, but I've talked more than worked. We're looking at how to provide meaningful data to the board from a performance data standpoint, taking that table and putting it in a graph. And what we're finding out is there is so much information on that table that if we tried to put everything in even in a couple graphs, it's pretty cumbersome. It turns into a very intensive process in trying to produce some of these things. So what we've done is try to identify and we want board feedback. What does the board want to glean from these? And I think the biggest thing is overall kilowatt hour sales and how do we trend over time? Because what we're going to propose is to essentially, because I've talked with different board members and some board members say graphs are great, others say I'd just rather have the numbers, and it's tough to find a unifying way of presenting information in the manner that everybody likes. I see a lot of value in this graph because I think more than anything what I heard was understanding trends over time. And there are a lot of trends that you can garner from a graph like this. But it's essentially what we're proposing on overall sales is a four-year look back, and then we'll add in the current year. So next month in July, there would be a new color for fiscal year 24, and then you could see how each month stacked up against the four previous years, and then you can also follow along throughout the year how we're trending cumulatively through the year. This doesn't break down to the industrial, residential, commercial, and that's really when we started trying to get that granular, the graphs ended up very, very cumbersome and difficult to discern much information from it. But this was our first kind of go at it. But what we're going to propose is modifying a graph like this, maybe adding one more in, but keeping and shifting certain items to almost an appendix in the board packet, and paring down some of the information. So what were thoughts, the appendix would essentially include, or supplemental information would include, the detail of the performance data that was currently, it's still the next page in the packet, it's in your packet. It include that detail in case anybody wants it. It would include the full income statement, because we mostly focus on the consolidated income statement. And then it would also include the check register from the previous month. So we're just looking at how do we compile meaningful information for the board without throwing so much information on a graph that it gets convoluted, or honestly one of the things I want to avoid is creating unnecessary administrative burden.
It becomes meaningless at a certain point,
Yeah.
and it's got to be meaningful.
Yeah. And I also, I'll be honest, I want to avoid producing another 8 new graphs, just because that week, the week of the board meeting is always a very busy, or the week of board packet, tends to be a very busy board meeting, or a busy week in the office anyway. So just again, I think there's a lot of good information in this.
Is this?
This is not in your packet.
This is not.
No, this is not. We were working on this up till it got put in the packet a couple hours ago. Might not have any changes, but.
Charlie, this is sales on the left-hand side and then.
So what this is your bar chart. Your bar chart and kilowatt hours is here, and then your cumulative is here.
Okay.
So the lines correspond to this axis, and your bars correspond to this axis. So what you can do, like I said, next month we'll have July 2024, fiscal year 2024, added in here. So you'll have a month-to-month 5-year comparison. And then you'll also be able to follow, and some of this information it's hard to discern in here, but as you move further out, you can really start to see, from a sales perspective, 2020, 2021. You can see that 2022 is actually ahead of 2023. So you're able to garner some trends from it, but it's not the same data that's there's not the granular level of data that's included in the table. And we looked at different ways of trying to incorporate a look back at trends per class and saying, hey, for residential, for industrial, for commercial, and the graphs got very much difficult. Difficult to figure out what each piece of data was. Because your legend was 4 times as long, and it became difficult. So this was our first stab at it. Wanted to, well, I wouldn't say this first stab. There's another 4 or 5 internal versions that we just didn't think conveyed useful information. So happy to take any feedback on the graph, or if you'd like to provide feedback in an email. We can get this sent out to everybody to digest a little bit more if you want. And this is where there's individuals. I personally like simple graphs with a few pieces of information, and then I can pull out what I want. Where some of the other graphs really was every piece of information trying to put in there, and it was like, holy smokes, I don't know what's red, blue, brown, pink, green. I'm lost. So.
Yeah, I kind of like the bar chart aspect of this graph.
Yeah.
It's just kind of, I hadn't thought of it that way before, but it's kind of neat to see that. What does March look like year by year? But then still be able to see sort of a overall trend that says, hey, look, April's always kind of low-wise.
And I think the interesting thing, Megan pointed this out to me, is April and May, fiscal year 2020 was COVID.
Yeah.
That's it. So you can see,
Yeah.
impacts of COVID right there, and you can see it lingering here. So it's kind of interesting. But then if you get to fiscal year 2021, so July 2020, which would come after obviously the June, the blue bar turns into the red bar, it's back to normal. So there's things that you can pull out of it. I'll be honest, I stole a lot of this from Al, rate consultant presented some information, but it also wasn't going to try to reinvent the wheel if it was effective. So.
Why would you?
Yeah.
Because that one thing I would suggest, I guess, is that it'd be nice to. I think the line could just be a separate chart, because what I'm personally kind of missing from this is the year-to-year trend. You can't really tell unless you memorize the order that it goes blue, red, green, purple, right? I can't tell the trend over the last several years, because the lines keep wrapping over themselves. Does that make sense? Like,
so you're saying one continuous 5-year chart? Like
just for the line.
Yeah, like we do for.
Which, yeah, you already kind of got that.
We do it for the electrical requirements. So that's why we didn't do that, is because electrical requirements, granted, it's not apples to apples, it's not sales, but they're 3.5% difference between requirements and sales. So the thought was, this graph kind of gave a requirements over a single line across multiple, but I'm happy to look at whatever's meaningful for the board.
Again, that's just a thought. Most of the trends, I guess personally, when I think of trends, I tend to think over like years time frame. Like, how are we doing as a utility year over year? Because month by month, there's so many different factors that I kind of rely on you guys to manage month by month. Although this is kind of interesting, like you said, that I normally would have pictured this graph as being a sequence of like 4 years every month in a row, right? So you just kind of see it go up and down like you were just showing there. So grouping them by month is kind of helpful in this case, and I like that. But I think for the line part, I just assume see that in a separate graph of a line just to say, hey, what's the yearly trend look like? Because right now I can't tell what the yearly trend was. Like you said, we've got that in a different chart.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to garner is what. This is for the board, so understanding the board, and I'm not trying to sound negative or anything, but trying to understand the board consensus on how to present this information is important, because we just,
So Andrew, what you're saying is putting that line graph on another chart on a different scale so we can see.
Yeah, essentially you'd be taking the right-hand scale and the lines and putting them on a different chart, that instead of just going from July to June, it goes from July to June and July to June, and just
I
straight.
guess I'm missing how that's different than, how you, I guess the shape was gonna look like that. Right? I guess
But I mean, without the months, just the year, right?
so are you saying 5 years, 60 months?
Just a longer term trend, yeah, like, but only,
And I guess I'm be honest, I'm missing how that's different than, the shape is gonna look like the electric requirements.
if you plot it by month, but I mean, just plot it by years.
Total sales for each year?
Right, but like,
I guess, and I apologize, maybe we can do this offline. Isn't that essentially what that is? At the end, your cumulative, that's cumulative for the year. So wouldn't it not be just these 4 points or 5 points on a chart, but are you looking
but
for a
just then
longer
they're
look?
gonna be, well, ideally a little longer, but just then they're in order. 'Cause right now, like, when I see that those final points, I have to go down and look, okay, which one comes first? Okay, blue comes first, then comes red, then comes green, then, you know, because I don't know.
And I guess that's where I'm seeing.
And then it'd be nice to see back farther than just the 4 years, and so, but only at a, like, not the monthly bit of it, but the annual bill. Because
I guess my question, I guess maybe we should talk about this offline a little bit, because I guess we'll look into it. Because
And I guess I would say, I mean, maybe this is not what everyone else thinks, but I kind of feel like I wouldn't be afraid of several simple charts, because from one, they can be a little smaller and still show a trend. If we want to know the data, we just ask you, and you guys open up your spreadsheet and look
Well,
at it.
and that's
But
what.
then at some point, we might say, you know what, this one's not that useful, take that one out, leave the rest. But if we tell you, hey, look, take out this part of it, now you've got to restructure the whole thing.
And that's where I'm concerned with the administrative burden
Right.
of creating, of what it takes to create the board packet, because it's it's a pretty extensive process. A lot of it falls on Megan, and a lot of the prep work is critical to the operations of the utility, closing out financial modules, things that, quite frankly, on the priority chart, stack up higher, because they're directly related to the operations of the utility. So if there's a board consensus to add, 4 or 5, because I think we're at about, to take the performance data, we're somewhere around 8 more charts, and simple charts. And I'm sure there's ways to automate that, but right now it's a very manual process of Megan going in and saying, I gotta select new data, expand the data that's included in every chart. Granted, and we both know, there's a way to automate it through macros. I can't do that, and Megan's not familiar, and, we don't have that skill set on staff, I'll be the first to admit it. So.
That'd be a good challenge for an intern sometime.
I was almost about to say, because we've talked about it, how many times have I said, why can't we find one of these intern kids that knows everything about Excel? Because I actually had an engineering intern in Tennessee.
Might not be Excel anymore.
Well, I was going to say, it might not be, right now it's in Excel, but what else is there? And then we're also looking at, as we evaluate Daffron as our software provider, if they're not the answer, what solution does the next company?
And do they offer something that?
Most do.
Right.
A lot of them offer, the platform I'm more familiar with offers a tool, a module that really is about it's a board dashboard.
Wow.
It's really awesome.
Oh, yeah, because.
And that's what I'd love to be able to say, here, board, here's the dashboard, and it takes that information, and it removes that, it automates a lot of that that stuff, so. Happy to keep looking at this. If you have comments, I'll email this out, please share them. You know, we can look at what that, and we look at how far we'll look back we have. Because at some point, in an overall, you know, look back, if you look back 10 years, you might see trends over time, and it would be helpful, but the trend's gonna be this. You know, I think intuitively, you all know that 10 years ago, we were a much smaller utility. Where I think some of the nuanced trends from month to month, but again, happy to try and figure out what's the right level of information to provide the board on a monthly basis, so it spurs interest, it gives you enough information to know what questions you want to know more about. Because that's what we try to do. I think the performance data itself is everything you could potentially know about, but most of the stuff you don't care about month to month. As the way it's presented now, or if you put it on a graphic, it's too busy. So trying to find, what we'd like to do is present enough information that the board sees trends, understands, what we're doing, where we stand, and then ultimately knows, hey, we've got a big variation between this and this, or whatever. Can you provide more information? We want to give you enough information so that you know when you want to ask for more. So we don't give you enough information, you don't know what questions to ask. So where's that middle ground? And this, like I said, this was our first stab at it. I see a lot of, I thought this was interesting to look at when I saw it. Because first thing I said was, man, why is April and May the only 2 months that, is our July and August really that consistent? Why is April and May, is it weather? So I immediately started asking questions. And then Megan said, hey, by the way, you can throw out a little bit of April and May on that because of COVID. So
yeah. No, I mean, again, I like the clump bars. I think that's a cool approach. It's just the line doesn't add much.
No, I would agree. It adds value on the very last month, and that's about it. If you can tell which line it corresponds to.
If there was more variation on the months, the line might help in terms of showing, hey, things slow down in April and May because they're the lowest, but they don't slow down that much. But again, that's where the annual trend comes into play there, I think. But yeah, I'm glad you guys are looking into this and trying to explore ways we could do something. So I feel like this is one area where I think we're kind of like behind sort of, technical industry in general, where most other areas I think we're kind of ahead in how we do business. I mean, in many ways, you guys are ahead of the more advanced in the company I work for, which is huge. But there's things you do here that are way better than the way I do things, but I just know coming from that environment, like, nobody makes a presentation without a bunch of charts, because data is very important.
Yeah.
And we'd have a very surprising lack of charts in our overall things, even just things like outage metrics. We kind of have to rely on the SAGE report, which is kind of goofy in its own right. But there's just, I want to just get us moving more in that direction of being comfortable using data to our advantage.
Yeah. So I'll not to change the topic or anything, but we'll dive right into the actual outage or the actual performance data. Again, this is the last month of the year, so you can kind of see current fiscal year, previous fiscal year, shows you kind of where we're stacking up a little bit. We did have a little, we'll have generation next month, you said. That's what it was. I couldn't remember when Casey operated. But again, just like the chart showed, sales are slightly behind from a volumetric standpoint from last year, but from a revenue standpoint. Now, and not to go back to the chart, but we focused on kilowatt hours because the dollars are kind of covered in the income statement. So there's some duplicative data there when you look at, or at least not directly duplicative, but very similar data included in the income statement from a dollars and cents standpoint. So that was one of the reasons we focused on the kilowatt hour, the volumetric sales side of things in the chart. But kind of moving on, again, the graphs, the information here is same every month. So if there's any questions, happy to answer them. Some of the interesting things, average kilowatt hour sales, just real quick. Looks kind of odd that residential took such a big dip, but that's a product of volume and the customer charge being such a bigger percentage of a bill. When you can spread that customer charge out over a higher volume of kilowatt hours, it really brings that average price down. So that's the one thing that looks kind of anomalous in this graph, but is just a product of customer charge and volumetric sales going into the summer.
That's the value of the graph, right there, right?
Yeah.
That just shows why that's important.
Yep. Investments in cash, made a little bit of a cash recovery. Finished. That line does not quite get to 3 million. If you're curious, it's like,
Very, very close.
I don't remember how many hours it was short. It's not far, I almost got it.
$410.46.
Probably pretty close, no. I don't know what it was, but we're gonna finish the year.
I just wrote out 3 million.
Yeah.
Because now it's right below the line.
But again, very much kind of the trends that we're looking to see, and we'll get into some days of cash and some other some information that we have later in the informational items. But again, a lot of the same story, and that's kind of the one kind of somber note. If you go to paperless billing, auto pay, and portal registrations, we saw a very slight slide in auto pay registrations this month for the first time since implementing.
What happened a year ago, like in July to August? There's a slight dip.
There was a slight dip. I missed that one. I did miss
That
that
was
one.
the first thing I noticed, like, oh no, it dipped. Wait, that happened before. It might go up again.
It'll go back up. It'll go at some point. At some point, the number will do this, and it'll kind of reach saturation point. And as we get new customers that sign up, we'll lose customers that were signed up that move away. So there's definitely a threshold somewhere. But the fact that about a third of our customers are on auto pay, and that's a direct result of people, marketing, proactive communication, that directly impacts bad debt, that directly impacts collections, directly impacts their workload, that allows, and if we free up their workload to focus on secondary focuses, we've got a great team. So, this allows them and enables them to do more with their time. So
That's where a long-term trend would be cool, right? So 3 years ago was the auto pay.
not really.
So we had some.
We had some.
Yeah.
But again, that's.
So is the auto pay, this happened a couple of years ago, where a couple of the certain banks were
That's not auto pay.
What is,
Well, wait, what are you
Yeah.
getting at?
well, and because I had a neighbor that, got
Mine did too.
a late fee, we waived it and everything, but because there was an issue with,
They're using online bank pay,
yes,
not our auto pay. They're going into their bank,
right,
saying, pay light and power $102.
correct,
Those payments, there's all kinds of problems with those
Most
payments.
of those still went from like the random credit cards.
So some banks are converting are calling our IVR and making a credit card payment so that they can get their points and their rewards for using the commercial card. But even when banks just cut checks, it takes a long time to get the checks sometimes.
Yeah, and so those are different than auto pay.
okay, all right.
So that's where they set it up through their bank,
Okay.
and then their bank pays us. But if they set it up through our system, it takes it directly from their account.
Okay,
And it's received at the time of the transaction where.
so are we still having that problem at all with,
I haven't heard recently, I'm assuming it's still happening, but I
Okay.
haven't heard about the problem.
That's a regularly occurring problem throughout everywhere. It's just how the online bank, because they cut physical checks. You pay online, and what people don't realize, they think, oh, I paid my bill through my bank. They just send the money straight to Light and Power and they'll have it tomorrow. No, they wait, they cut a check, and there's times, I don't know how it works here, there's times that I've seen envelopes come with 50 checks. And you don't know if some people paid a week before, some people paid 3 days before. But when you bump up, oh, it's the day before due date, I've got to pay my bill, let me hop on the bank. It will be late because we won't receive funds
Right.
Until after the late fees have been charged. But to your point, we have programs in place that allow for learning curves like that.
So that's different than hard,
Yes.
okay.
I just set up a company called Andrew's Auto Pay where people sign up through me and then I just walk over with spare change in a truck, Hey, you guys.
It might be more reliable than the bank. PCA revenue, again, bounce back up. We're heading on a really good trend, but we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out as power prices are lower than they were this time last year, but there are still significant costs. Market costs are down right now, but that's a blip in the radar. Our project costs are up, bilateral costs are up, which Campbell shut down unexpectedly last week, so that'll be a more expensive than the mark-to-market on those bilaterals will probably not be great. Moving on to outage report. To be honest, I don't know much about the details of these outages. There was a squirrel and some trees. They're very common summer outages. Again, I don't have a ton of details on any of these. Largely tree driven and tree and squirrel driven, but also still some very productive outage metrics. Still 5 nines from a ASAI standpoint, and then Sadie, Safety, Katie are all still pretty effective outage statistics for the month.
Harry, yesterday, I was driving down Main Street at Main and Amity. There was a dead squirrel out in the middle of the road, and I almost wanted to take a picture of it and send it to you, just so you could have the satisfaction of seeing your dead squirrel.
She's the cause. She got to it.
So, I thought that was before the income statement. Did we put it after the income statement? The cash stuff? Was it after, wasn't it? After. I couldn't remember what. So this is the, not the year-end income statement. So I'll just remind the board that this number will be adjusted significantly through the audit process, through GASB entries, reversing and adjusting entries. And then the final net income number will be very different and probably much lower. To give perspective, that $170,000 from last year was the audited number. The number that we reported to the board in July for June was about $100,000 under where we're at now. So it's in the 430s. So that number can change significantly between the unaudited financials and the actual audited financials, and that's largely driven by GASB more than anything, or GASB 68, whatever number it is, the retirement stuff. So,
Can you go back to where's tree trimming expense?
Tree trimming expense, that'll be,
Or is it coming up?
yeah, it's in the detail. So tree trimming expense was way over budget this year.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, and again, I just wanted to verbally make a point of what we budgeted and what we actually, and again, that's, I don't know what we budgeted for this coming year
53,000. No, I don't know. I was looking at.
for the,
I'll have to look.
no, I mean, it is what it is, but I just wanted to point that out, so that the general public can see, what part of our reliability is, or a good share of our reliability is tree trimming and making sure that, and again, that can be a hefty number.
Yes, it's a roller coaster number. It's a very difficult to budget number, because we have not spent $128,000 in tree trimming in many, many years. And it just was a product of the needs this year.
But we have, probably before Megan's time, we have, when we were using outside
Yeah.
services, we were up into the $250,000,
Yeah.
$250,000 in tree trimming.
And they weren't doing as good of a job as for what I've heard.
You guys went out and invested in the tools to make it happen too, so I think when you get you get a little bit more excited about using
there
a
a
new
chipper in
tool
that?
versus the old tools that you had before, so
Yeah.
therefore you're gonna increase your
Yeah.
productivity.
Go ahead, and they do a great job with the tree work. It's a challenge, that's for sure.
But I also know that over the years, we have gotten better at accounting, where that is, Megan and our workers, our line workers have documented and been able to, they have then, when Megan and the office staff inputs that information, been able to more accurately show where those expenses are, whereas many times before, it was just lumped into a big bucket.
So, yeah, that's all, but you're actually absolutely right. And from a board perspective and a budgeting perspective, tree trimming is very much a labor-driven expense. There are other expenses with it, but it's very much labor-driven. So where you see major overages from a budget standpoint, or variations from the budget, a lot of that is just an offset somewhere else, especially in other areas. Granted, distribution expenses, we did finish over budget, $26,000 for the year. Over 2/3 of that is in a $16,000, $17,000 unexpected vehicle maintenance. We talked about a little bit last month, but that number would have come in a little closer to budget if that unexpected expense didn't happen, but you gotta have the tools to do the job.
One last question, because not every month, but I do kind of look at these numbers and everything. So street lighting, are we responsible, or is that a shared expense with the city?
No, we bill the city for streetlight work,
Okay,
or the township, depending on. where the-
so when we're over budget, it's not a huge thing, because again, we're getting compensated.
Yes, and Megan's nervous right now, because I got a soapbox about how.
Don't get on it.
I was gonna say, she's gonna tell me don't get on it. We talk, I think that's a problem. There's a problem there. I would agree, because it's offset through revenues, but when you look at it, you can't see. And I would,
Okay.
I'm close to getting on, she's nervous, she said we'll be here for the 3 hours. All right, we'll move on, but yes, I'm happy to talk, but yes, it is offset through the revenues. It's not a concern if we're over budget, because it's not, they're not really our assets, they're the city assets or the township assets. My soapbox is gone. All right, we're gonna get into, Daniel had actually asked me for this, and he was not able to make it, so I thought it was really good information. We did this last year. Wanted to present a very preliminary look at days of cash. This number will change between now and the budget for fiscal year end cash balance, but wanted to show, oh man, I thought I had teachers standing up. I need a laser pointer, but wanted to show, we were on, obviously, this graph, you all saw this graph last year. This is the first year of a cash rebuilding plan. So we're moving in the right direction. It's a challenge. We are not projecting to hit the 120 days right now, but this number we projected at 109 and it adjusted up. This number may adjust up, may adjust down. I don't want to make any promises, but wanted to start showing trends, and we'll continue to do this on an annual basis. This is the one that is really highlights some of the financial challenges that we face. What does 120 days of cash look like? Our policy is based on 120 days of operational cash. Well, as your operational expenses change, what constitutes 120 days of cash changes. That's a pretty steep incline over a few years and this is unrestricted cash. We talked about $3 million earlier in cash. That includes restricted cash. So this is just unrestricted. But you can see what the trends are over time for what it takes to have 120 days of cash. So we'll roll on to the next one as well. And this graph looks the same, scales are different, but what does 1 day of cash look like? And just to maintain 120, I don't remember the exact number, but just to maintain 120 days of cash, we would have needed to grow cash by like $150,000 this year. So just to not lose ground in days of cash, it was about $150,000 cash increase that we needed to have.
So Charlie, is that number 22,000 a day? That's far away.
Yes, it's about 20, I don't remember what it was, 22.2,
Okay.
22.3?
Yeah, just over 22.
Yeah,
Okay.
20, so it's about $22,000 a day. 3 years ago, it was about 18.5. Before that, it was about 18. So we've seen about a 20, I did very rough math, not steep math, about a 21 to 22% increase over 3 to 4
Is
years.
that mostly due to the cost of buying energy?
Yes, very much attributed to cost of energy.
A little bit of payroll, but.
Yeah, no, there's actually other things. I mean, there will be natural fluctuations. I mean, we are just the labor side of things, benefit side of things. There are inflationary pressures that increase that on an annual basis, but that's what we're faced with. And then this is very preliminary, but we're looking at somewhere around 118 days of cash. This time, last year when we did the preliminary analysis, I want to say we're about 109,
106?
106. It was, so trying to look at.
6 and a 9 are close. They just,
Yeah, well,
they just flip them and they're,
I'll be honest, this number's going to change. This is nothing official. This is just a glimpse into the future a little bit. So,
yeah.
but wanted to highlight, you talk about some of these overages, power supply. Power supply overages are about 31 days of cash, just from market volatility. So, hey, if the market's just stable and does what it was projected to do at the beginning of last fiscal year, we'd be sitting on 150 days of cash. Obviously, that wouldn't happen because revenues would have adjusted, PCA would have adjusted. There would have been more moving pieces, but this is just to give a glimpse at some of the changes we made throughout the year as well, things that we did to save some money and adjustments we made, changes in capital budget. So just to give a little bit of foreshadowing on how the cash recovery plan is starting to shape up kind of in year one. So again, last year I think between the preliminary number and the audited number, there was about 12 days of cash change. Don't know how what will happen this year, because last year was the first year we kind of did it, so we're still learning necessarily what all the impacts are between July 1 and whenever the audit happens, because there's a lot of adjusting and reversing entries and adjustments to cash balances, so. But we should be somewhere very close to that 120 days. Next year, we should be well above 120 days, and we should be marching towards about 140 to 145 days over the next 3 to 4 years is the hope.
How did the line shack deal not going through affected your budget this year? Because you have not seen that money,
No.
I'm thinking, at this point?
No, we have not, so that would
But that
have
was
been
part of your budget from a year and a half ago, wasn't it, a year ago?
2 years,
Yeah,
that was
we included that in this analysis.
And that's, okay.
last year. Yeah, it's
Okay.
about, I mean, it's about 5 days, 5.5, 6 days of cash.
Yeah.
Which, again, you can see would, you know, is substantial for sure, so, but we're close on that.
Yeah.
We're very close on that one, but we'll give the
This
update.
doesn't really look, it's supposed to look like this.
It's gonna be real look right now.
Yeah, it is.
Other than that, we'll roll on to, if there's any questions on days of cash, any of the charts, anything here. Again, very preliminary information.
You didn't want to calculate our write-offs in terms of days of cash?
I'll do that for you real quick. So $250 divided by 22,500, it's a very small number. No. I was gonna convert to the minutes, it's down to hours, like, it's minutes, actually.
It's gotta be minutes.
Oh, now I got to.
You wasted more time figuring it out.
But on this question for you. So the 355,694, which is remaining, is that all, what do I want to say? Is that all designated for different projects, different things? That just happens to be,
It's not really remaining, it's remaining in budget. That number is how much short of the budget, of the original capital budget we're gonna come. We budget our capital budget on an annual basis, so some of these projects do carry over, but we reallocate those funds in our current fiscal year for those. So the big one being system improvement budget, that's a large chunk of what we pulled out was the contractors, and some of that budget. So those amounts just roll over into our current budget. So the goal of that and why we peeled away is to, I guess if you want to allocate it somewhere, it's allocated to cash. So not necessarily what you're,
so what I'm looking at is, in my mind, and correct me as I'm going, okay, it's the wire that we need to purchase is double what it was. So again, if I'm looking at it, I'm going, okay, we got the money there to buy that phone. Why aren't we just buying that wire before it doubles again?
Not necessarily how it works, because
Okay.
your capital budget is, I don't want to say a byproduct, but if your operating budget doesn't, your capital budget is supported through operating revenues. If your operating revenues aren't there because you have increases in power supply or you have costs that overrun, that has to be compensated through the capital budget. Because the way we budget is we look at all of our operating expenses and say, it's more complicated than this, but what's left? What's the additional money? Because as a not-for-profit, our goal is to reinvest as much as possible. Well, as we saw power supply and market disruptions, we said our projected budget or projected financials for the rest of the year don't support the originally proposed capital budget. We've got to adjust that capital budget to make sure we maintain financial stability. So just because there's $355,000 there, doesn't mean we have $355,000 in cash to spend.
So then, for me, there needs to be a little asterisk somewhere, because if Joe Blow, if I just go and look at this, in my mind is, okay, we got amount remaining, this is what we budgeted, and we got the amount remaining, we must have $355,694 sitting someplace.
It really is remaining in budget. Just because it's in the budget doesn't mean there's money there to do it. So, and that's what it came down to, is there's not money, there wasn't financial support from the operating revenues to carry out the full, $950,000 capital budget. So we'll try to remember to change that. I'll put an asterisk. This is not money in the bank.
Well, I mean,
Not cash. It's not a cash number. It's a
Budget remaining, right?
yeah, I'm saying just put budget remaining. You make a note to make that change,
Got
because
it.
I'll forget by Monday.
Ironically, the third column says that.
Oh, that was the that's the carryover. So, with capital budget, we did release, we released some funds to expedite, because we had some available funds coming into June. Ryan talked about the work on Monroe. We kind of turned that loose ahead of schedule because we did have some capacity, not $200,000 in capacity, to do something. So they were able to expedite and get a jump start on some of the satellite projects that were budgeted for our current fiscal year 2024, which will ultimately free up additional funds to make sure we can carry out and finish the satellite projects and maybe incorporate some additional projects into next year's budget. But that is pretty much capital budgets. We'll say the only two remaining, with the capital budget, one of the challenges is trying to guess what's going to be remaining and carry over into the next year, because we make the budget. When we made the budget and the board approved the budget, we weren't sure if the generator was going to be sitting out here. You don't really know, but we kind of have an idea now. We put $50,000 in the budget to carry over from fiscal year 23 to FY 24. And we think that number is going to come in closer to $35,000. There's a significant delay on a capacitor bank for circuit 204, 207, not 204, 207. I think originally it was supposed to be in March or April, Casey, you remember?
I want to say April.
April, and the new estimated delivery is October. So, about a month after delay, they said, oh yeah, it's not just a little delayed, it's going to be October. So, there's a lot of shot in the dark, but we do have a little more visibility now. Last year we carried over 50,000 and spent just about 50,000 in carryover. This year we carried over 50,000 and we're hoping to come in around the $35,000 mark for the carryover items, which is largely finishing up the work that's necessary for the generator and then getting the capacitor installed. It'll be here in October. It was ordered last October, if not before, actually. Do you remember when it was? You looked.
I want to say it was October.
October, yeah. It's turned into a 12 to 13 month lead time. Tough. Yeah. Move on to where are we at? Manager's report. Not a ton to talk about in the manager's report. Again, there's a lot of details in there. I'll roll through. Ryan has included quite a bit of information. Inventory has been wrapped up, which is nice. The East Side Feed update, we're meeting with GRP on Thursday to meet with the contractors, but everything's projected to be here, and we're, some of it's, as Ryan mentioned, poles were delayed, wire's been delayed, but we're thinking that things are gonna line up pretty well for the contractors being here.
Could that be Wednesday the 26th? Because Friday's the 28th, because the 28th.
They were here.
They were.
Oh,
June 28th.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, June.
Sorry.
Okay. Never mind. Brain fart, sorry. We're here, I was on site, yeah, okay, yeah.
Want to highlight, in Casey's report, we did they had a pretty, and there's some pictures in there that you can get to, but they had a contract, Casey had a contractor in place, or come in to, we had an issue, I'm gonna report, I know I reported to the board, but probably wasn't a big thing. Found out that the exhaust stack in one of the combustion turbines, it was getting hot and melting the roof. The brand new roof that was installed in
2017.
27, yeah, not brand new, it's new in a roof. It's a 20 plus, it's a 20, 25, 30 year life roof. So yeah, it was melting it and I think it was dripping down into the facility and not ideal. He contacted the roofing company and said you got issues. Ultimately needed to insulate better. So the roofing or insulation company came in, provided or installed some insulation around the stack, and there's pictures in there that we can touch on at the end. But it looked like, from what I can tell, a very successful project. Units are back up and operational, and they've actually operated some since that. Operated since and have followed up. That's what those pictures are from.
Yes.
Yep. So, safety update, we did sign a 3-year contract with Mecca for safety training needs for the line staff. So looking forward to getting that rolling. Like I said, it's a 3-year agreement. It's about $12,000 in year 1, and it escalates at 5% a year for the years 2 and year 3. Again, this is the training that Ryan and I went and participated in Portland, and they do a really good job, and will be a benefit to our overall safety program. And our guys, the field staff mostly, will really benefit from the opportunity to network with the crews at Portland and get to know the crews at Tri-County Homeworks or Homework Tri-County, the co-op that's based in Portland. So, Line Shack update. Last night, the Line Shack site plan was approved, which I've reached out to our attorney to ask what are the next steps, but the last I was told was the last major step before closing was getting the site plan approved. The sale, I don't know if necessarily the sale was conditional on the site plan being approved, but pretty much it was. I mean, the sale wasn't going to go through if the developer couldn't develop it. So talking, Todd Shaw, the developer, was at the Planning Commission last night. I was there, Chairman Beecham was there.
Craig was there.
Council members, there was a full crowd. There was a lot more exciting things than the Line Shack, thank God.
Just as important.
I needed the excitement to be elsewhere. We all needed the excitement to be elsewhere, but proposed a 3-story, 4 condo complex, 2-car garage. It's a vertical, each one of them are kind of townhouse structure. First floor of all 4 is a 2-car garage, and then living quarters on 2nd and 3rd floor. So each unit itself will be 3 stories with a garage, 1st floor, 2nd floor. He didn't have details on a timeline, but the development agreement, purchase and development agreement, does require a quick demolition of the existing structure. So what he had mentioned at the Planning Commission last night was he fully anticipated to have the Line Shack demolished this year with construction starting next year. Maybe some construction starting this year, but it did receive approval. I've reached out to Jessica and asked for more information on what's the next steps and when's closing. So, getting closer. If we sell it and we get the check, I'm going home for the day. Nothing for the day will top clearing that from our plate. Another thing I want to bring up is customer survey. Customer survey was launched end of last month, kind of beginning of July, but we've already had 38 responses. One of the interesting things that I've found so far is 50% of our responses have come from customers 65 or older, which I just thought was interesting.
Probably because everybody's paying online,
And that's, I'm not sure what,
because that survey's not hitting everybody though,
what do you mean?
Do you go paperless?
paperless.
I
How
don't
would they know
remember
about the
seeing-
survey?
You get a link to the insert.
Yeah, it's a link in the insert. It was also on the marquee downtown for a week. It'll be in the newspaper.
It will be.
It will be, it's not,
How's it say?
Oh.
next week?
This week,
Still this week.
I think.
I couldn't remember what the time was, but we're trying, yeah, so we've got plans to put it in the ledger, plans for, obviously, bill inserts.
It's on the website.
It's on the website.
And
It'll-
Facebook,
it'll-
you do Facebook?
We
Yeah.
don't put it on Facebook.
Okay, then let's put it there.
We did another kind of communication strategy type meeting and said, where are all the avenues we need to hit to try and maximize the number of customers? And then the other thing that we have is, somebody on a weekly basis is sending out a report on the status. So on a weekly basis, we're tracking how much progress. So again, we have some contingency plans. If we're not reaching certain demographics, we'll maybe get more targeted in.
I was wondering, have you explored doing Thursdays at Riverwalk?
No, we talked about it, but the majority of the people there are not our customers. That's the biggest problem we run into, because we talked about Riverwalk, we talked about the concerts, the expo, whatever, all these, if Riverwalk's a little bit, anything down on the Riverwalk's a little more concentrated with our customers, but, expo, things like that, if 30% of the people that stop by are our customers, then it's probably a pretty high number. So it's tough to target just our customers through community events, because we do draw in from such a large area.
So, and this, I'm smirking because, and I had never said anything to my wife, but again, she got obviously the bill and got the flyer, and the first thing she said to me was, "Really? So 1 is good and 10 is bad?" And I had not said anything to her. I mean, the grading scale is completely opposite of what normally everybody thinks about as being one being.
How did we get there?
So we asked. I was very concerned. I don't like it, I'll be honest. I think it's dumb, for a lack of a better, more technical term. I was hoping they had a very scientific, calculated reason why. They don't. It's because, I don't remember what they said.
People read from.
People read from left to right, so,
Yes.
and this is a very, very reputable company. This is Blue Water Research, Blue something.
I think Blue Water.
Yeah, I mean, it's a,
I mean,
But
and
yes.
the whole thing is like, if you look at gymnastics, the perfect score is a 10.
no, it's a 1 now.
Huh? It's a 1 now. And if you, I mean, but this whole, people have been basically trained, like, rate it from 0 to 10. 10 is the best, 1 is the worst, 0 is the worst. Well, they have it, and we'll see what kind of.
So that was the first thing I looked at, because we get results. Results so far have been overwhelmingly positive. And I don't think anybody has not seen that. Because as you see our materials, it will say, I think Emily has on every material, please note 1 is good and 10 is bad. Because it's so backwards. But I was really hoping that there was they were doing it to make sure people paid attention or I was hoping it was a research, I would hope that it would be a research-based decision. It's not.
That's just the way we did it.
I was wildly disappointed with their answer, because we want to know why, and they didn't give us a great reason. But this is the platform that really enables us to compare ourselves to our peers, because this is the APPA platform. It's also very economical, so it was, we talked about this in previous meetings. This is, it's less than ideal, but I'm also pleased with very, very preliminary results. Not necessarily from the results, but that I don't see customers being confused or misunderstanding how the survey works. There are very few ones, or tens. It's already in my head, I still think that way. There are very few tens. I think there might be, of 30, there's 38 responses, and there's probably 5 questions, 6 questions, 10 questions, something like that. I think there's only 2 tens in the group. There's some lower, or some higher numbers, just goofy, but really it's overwhelmingly 1s and 2s so far. RP3 application, continue to work through it. We actually met today. All of everything's on everybody's radar. We're working towards getting it wrapped up, but like I said, I think I've told the board, we have an internal goal of being ready to submit by September 1. And it'll probably take us every bit until September 1 to get prepared for it, but we've made great headway on it. Fortunately, have some unpleasant news to report. We have seen a major uptick in hostile customers and very foul customers. I think Megan had mentioned, we actually had to call the police for the first 2 times in her time here, which is 9 years. First 2 times we had to call the police was on the same customer a week apart. If we have a customer that is not welcome in the building right now, and if he shows up in the building, he'll be arrested. And we will pursue every legal action that's available to us to make sure we send a very clear message to the public that we don't put up with it. I have no tolerance for it. I won't ask the office to have tolerance for it. Tell them they're welcome to kick anybody out of the office for just cause at any given point. They're welcome to hang up on any customer that wants to cuss at them. They're not expected to sit and take the abuse that they take more of than they should. It pisses me off, honestly. But wanted to update the board on that. It was important. We did have police in the building. Perry was aware, but the first incident we actually locked the doors and put a sign up that if you wanted to get in the building, you had to call to be let in that day. We are looking at adding panic buttons. We've implemented some procedures, some lockdown procedures.
And you already have cameras though, correct? Who's coming and going?
We are expanding cameras. This budget year, we're going to expand cameras. The other thing that we're doing is putting a camera monitor, camera TV, right in the office with everybody up front. That way, they kind of have a heads up.
So while somebody's at the counter, the girls that are behind it are there, is watching what's going down.
Yep. And with, there's certain customers, like I said, this one customer is not welcome in the building. He will be arrested for trespassing as soon as he steps on the property. Or the cops.
Thank you for supporting your employees and drawing a line in the sand, because this is the first time I ever heard that somebody's actually drawn a line in the sand for their employees like that.
Well,
You haven't had a need to.
That's the bad thing. And I'll be honest, I have, the line that they've drawn in the sand for themselves is far too far for me. They take some crap, more than they should. I just don't have tolerance for it.
and that's.
I wish I would have been in the office when this customer was there. Actually, I really wish some of the guys would have been there. Actually, it's probably a really good thing they weren't, because
They would have really taken.
but it wouldn't have escalated. I can tell you that. Because when this happened, I wasn't in the building. I was actually on vacation, I think, which sucked. Hate not being there for things like that, but they called the guys, called Brian, said 911 at the office, get the guys there. Let me tell you, they got there.
So again, when we were talking about the write-offs and everything, and talking about our employees are so professional how they handle themselves. it's not the direction that we really want to go, or at least Charlie and I. But, I don't know if he's rethought, but looking at what the expense is for, and I believe it's the political climate that we're in. And I don't want to go there so much right now, but I believe that the political climate, what's happening in our federal and state and around the nation has allowed people to abuse other people. And
It
our
becomes
employees,
far too acceptable.
our employees should never be abused. We should not condone that, but we are investigating. Again, what we did quite a few years ago is, if you remember, that it was literally open. Somebody could jump the thing, so we put in regular glass and made it more accessible. But we're looking at bulletproof glass, bulletproof drywall. I mean, and it's a shame that we publicly, that we're at that moment. But
There's nothing we take more seriously than the safety of all employees, and typically we think of line work as being dangerous.
Right.
You know, but our commitment to safety and providing a safe work environment extends to all employees. And if that's what it takes to make our employees feel safe, then it will not be well received by the public. It sucks. I've been involved in it, and people come in, and the general public does not want to think it's necessary in their community. And that's what stinks. It takes a level of connection to the good customers away.
Charlie, after 48 years in the security business, and you mentioned something about a panic button, it's only as good as the response of our police department, and let's face it, our police department are overwhelmed. So by the time you pull that button, it's probably going to be maybe 10 minutes. You don't know where he could be at an accident. So look beyond the police response when you talk about a panic. How do I protect the gals behind the office?
Yes.
Like you said, lockdown.
We have
the
lockdown.
bulletproof, they have a Kevlar wallpaper you put on. You don't have to change out the drywall,
Right.
but you get that. But I know what you're saying. So that's more important than what's that. How do we protect them for that 10, 15 minutes, whatever response it takes to get there. So.
Yeah, and we're fortunate we have an old building. It is easier to secure yourself in an old building.
Yes.
Our doors are heavy, the walls are heavy, but we have procedures in place.
Well, you got a glass door by the back corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can get that Mylar film put on it, so something to think about that from somebody just coming around, just breaking the glass and getting in there. So there are some other things.
There's some things that.
If you want me to talk to you about it, I'll be more than happy to, but you got a good guy that you're dealing with too.
Well, and I think, unfortunately, I headed up a renovation project in a previous community that was very much geared towards safety, so we did the window film.
Yep.
We did Kevlar sheetrock, we did ballistic glass. You're not allowed to call it bulletproof, by the way.
Yeah.
It's ballistic.
Ballistic proof,
Yeah,
yeah.
they don't.
And when you get it, make sure you get that little cut in there, so when you talk, you get that.
Well,
that noise.
the nice thing is the glass that I've had good luck with, I've seen it, it's called baffle glass. It's 3 pieces. But you have, your 2 side pieces are behind, and then you have a 3rd piece that sits, and there's an air gap here.
Yeah.
So you can talk around it, but your hand can't reach through.
Yeah.
That's what the experience I have that has been, the only problem is without the whole bunch, people think they have to scream. So
Yeah,
it's a
they
learning
don't.
curve.
You hear this like you're
Oh, yeah.
talking like this.
But they call, hey!
Yeah, that's a lot of.
Or they sneeze on it. You don't, let me tell you, one of the things that is unnerving is how dirty that glass gets. Because you realize that was all over you and your stuff before it was there, but different topic.
Okay.
But, yeah, like you said, we're looking into these things. I do want to say a humongous thank you to the city police. I will never advocate for turning over the policing of Lowell to Kent County Sheriff. And I know there is sometimes community discussion pockets that bring that up. It's not a personal opinion, it's a professional opinion at this point. And I would be compelled if there's ever any momentum to be adamantly opposed to that because of the response that we get. Granted, it may be 10 minutes, but if it's 10 minutes from a Lowell police officer, it's 30 minutes.
Oh, it is, yeah.
40, 50. No, I will forever advocate for having a local police department that can support us, because I saw the benefit. Actually, I wasn't there to see it, I heard about the benefit. But Detective Culver, I don't know the other officer's name, I think his first name was Brian. I didn't catch his last name, but extremely professional, extremely responsive, and extremely helpful. So can't say enough good things about Lowell's Police Department.
And that's, again, this is to me more convenient or whatever, but that's one of my biggest concerns was having our meetings here was safety issue because again, where we're having our meetings, there's no escape route. There's no one downstairs in the hallways, and we really, at one point, if we're, I was considering the suggestion of having an off-duty officer or whatever, it's the and I believe it's the political climate that our politicians have endorsed this type of behavior. So.
On a more positive note, talk a little bit about computerized maintenance management system. Want to bring attention to that. This is a pretty significant project, part of succession planning, part of formalization, part of automation, just using technology to improve our operations. But it's a CMMS. It's really a comprehensive management system that keeps track of all reoccurring tasks, all inspections, and it will ensure that regardless of the people, the processes are in place to continue doing the good things that we're doing right now. One of my focuses right now is we have an extremely strong team. How do we leverage our current team to set us up for success into the future? CMMS is a big tool to that. Ryan knows exactly what needs to happen in the distribution department. Casey knows what needs to happen in the generation department, but I want to make sure that, and I think as a utility, we want to make sure that their legacy lasts longer than any of them. So that's one of the main objectives of this platform, is to make sure that any compliance thing, any reoccurring critical, whether it's an inspection, compliance report, anything like that is going to be baked into this management system, and people will automatically get emails telling them they need to do it. The processes and procedures, so how things are done, are logged in this software, and there's step-by-step instructions. So not only are we going to ensure that we continue to do the good things that we're doing now, we're going to ensure that we continue to do them the same way. That tried and true practices and procedures are documented, formalized, and baked into this software. It's also going to be I won't say a training tool, but it's a tool to help expedite and onboarding. Tony's new still to the utility world. We can bake certain procedures in this, certain inspections, directions, pictures, guidelines on how things need to be done. So it it flattens the learning curve quite a bit, just in an onboarding situation. It also ensures continuity. So it's a business continuity benefit, it's a succession planning benefit, it's a training tool, and it's just a compliance tool. So I'm really excited about this. It's going to be a pretty heavy lift, and it'll be definitely a living and breathing type of program where new applications will be identified regularly, but this is a really a pretty big step. It's not all that exciting. You know, it's not building new power lines and visible, really outwardly showing examples of the good work that we do. But not everything we do can be flashy. We've got to make sure that we continue to do the basic things, or the things that are necessary to facilitate the more exciting things, and making sure we're in compliance with everything, making sure we're staying on top of some really good procedures and practices that have been put in place with our current leadership team, and making sure that their successors are set up to continue doing the good things that they've implemented.
Does that have the inspection forms included in it too, so when you're done, it's like a PDF, I fill it in and automatically gets saved?
It's all fillable, you
Right.
can take pictures, the soil, I use the soil gas system over here as a good example. We are required by Eagle to do quarterly tests, quarterly inspections, quarterly tests. So with that, you can document, we gotta check the pressure in the ground to make sure you still are pulling a vacuum through everything. So you check it, you can document right in there. So if Eagle were to ever show up and say, I need your inspection logs, instead of fumbling through paper, here's a database. Couple clicks, run a report, what do you want? So yeah, you can do that, and you can bake procedures in as well. So those inspection forms are converted to a digital, it's not really a fillable format, it's kind of their own platform, but it corresponds, or you can actually upload fillable PDFs and then they save to their cloud and it's all stored. We can pull that data down anytime we want and have access to all of our stuff. So IT update. Right now, I'm hoping they're close to done. I don't know what the timeline was, but they should be done.
We're good.
We're good? You already got the text?
Yeah.
All right. Live update. The last major implementation of the IT project happened today. At 5 o'clock, we cut over the phone system to a cloud-based, still a voice over IP system, but instead of being an on-premise based system where we own physical hardware here that makes the phone system work. It's all cloud-based, so we just have to have access to the internet. We have a primary internet connection through Point Broadband and a secondary internet connection with an automatic failover through Comcast. So we should have phones, have phones through the internet, regardless of even internet outages, unless there's a major internet outage that's impacting Comcast.
Do you have them coming in two different directions into the building?
They go to different buildings.
Different buildings, okay, because I said if this one
Yes.
major line was cut, I just lost both.
No, now there's still more things that we need to do to improve the resiliency and redundancy on our IT systems, but one internet source comes into one building and another internet source comes into
Did
another.
the city do this for their phones too? Or
Yes, it's
was that one time it was all part of
a
one
unified
system?
platform.
Right,
So this is something we join in with the city on this. So.
because I only hear it if I come here.
I understand.
They hope Mike's listening.
Yeah. But I'm glad, I was actually nervous that Casey Casey was the contact during the board meeting. If Casey got a text message, he was gonna leave, and it was gonna be phone problems. So if I saw Casey leave, I was about to be really distracted, curious about what disaster happened. Because the original cutover on the major IT equipment was a struggle. But other than that, last thing I want to talk about is want to wish Lisa a very happy second work anniversary.
Oh.
And I
She
think,
said like a year ago was her first.
yeah, she has been an awesome addition to the team. Part of that administrative staff that just kicks butt. We've got a great team. You miss it. Craig even referenced your dream team. We have the dream team.
We do.
So,
We really do.
Lisa's very much a part of that for in the office, so. That is all I have for the manager's report, except for pictures, forgot about them. This was Safety Town.
Aww.
this is a fun event. This is something new that we picked up last year. Impact Church does,
Where's that at?
Impact Church.
Oh, Impact Church?
Yeah, so they asked us to come out. I get to go talk to a bunch of little kids, which is fun. I can't talk to them after they get to about second grade. They get above my mental maturity sometimes, so. No, that age group's a lot of fun. We talk about, and it's good timing. Here's some,
Where's that?
this is the thermal, yeah, this is the thermal image. This is actually from inside looking up. The top picture's the before, next to the word before. I forgot that was on there. Before and after pictures of the insulation that was done around the turbines, because the exhaust is actually melting. That's what was melting the roof. Right around on the outside, right around the exterior there was melting
And what was that temperature, 274 or something it looks?
I couldn't quite read, I think that's a location.
and that's, I didn't know, is that true? Is the,
But what's the temperature scale? I couldn't quite.
yeah, is that,
Yeah, pretty tight.
Is-
So
is
the
that an-
exhaust stack itself was over 600 degrees.
oh wow.
And then that was radiating. It's almost like it's hard to see in that picture because of the thermal image colors, but it's like a hood up there where it's like 2 feet of kind of like a shielded hood on the roof. So basically all that heat was just radiating up there. There's no airflow, and it just convects and holds and radiates, and then it melts roof tar and the membrane on the roof. And
What took that picture?
we have a thermal image camera.
Can we walk down the street to 806 Lafayette and give me a thermal image of my house?
Actually, you know what, I'll go check one out of the library.
That's so cool. Because I'm
Well, they have thermal cameras up
Yeah, for
there.
winter time, see what's all your heat's coming out of the
Where
boards.
everything's gone?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah,
they're
pretty much.
great for winter
Yeah.
inspections of your home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I get one?
I'm gonna check it out again. I checked it out to inspect all the buildings at Fallisburg and my house, yeah.
All right,
Cool.
let's do it.
Then the last picture is Tony.
Oh,
Setting,
generator, getting on that pad.
setting the new generator.
Yeah.
There we go.
Gotta love it. Those are the pictures, I believe. Did have a question about, for you, Jim.
Yes?
The city's website has the August 7th city council meeting canceled. And I couldn't think of why it was canceled. I left it on here as canceled, but
Well, I know we canceled July 3rd, or this year, but I don't know of August 7th yet.
I think, let me double check. I think
It's
so.
on there, I have no
I
idea
saw
why
it
it
too,
would
because I
be.
checked that.
Did it get
So I was like, why?
duplicated when they did the third cancellation?
It's possible.
Yeah, it
That
says
would be the first Monday in August.
the first Monday in August, August 7th, 7 PM, says canceled. So I just wasn't.
I'm not sure either.
Okay.
Find out.
I'm one fan. I don't know what's going on. Sorry, that's all.
Galen got it, right?
I know.
Schedule of meetings, our next meeting will be August 15th, but there is another important date. August 19th is company picnic. If you've seen on your,
That's one note I had.
if you've seen on your, keep the date, Lisa sent out, but it's out at Falsburg at the pavilion. I think
It'll be at the pavilion on Covered Bridge up by the ball field. So we don't have, we actually just talked about it what did we talk about? Was it today? Yeah, today. So that's Saturday, August 19th. We're tentatively planning about 3 to 7, I believe, later afternoon type of event. But we, kickball, wiffle ball, cornhole, food. Please join us, bring your spouses. There will be more information go out. There will be an RSVP that goes out, so we get head count stuff. But if anybody can make it, we'd love to have everybody and spouses and families. And we wanted to do an event that brought families together and expanded just the employee group. Love having an employee group get-togethers, but it's so awesome to see everybody's little kids running around. And, it's a little cliche, but they say we're a family. I would say we're a very close group. So it'd be fun.
Okay, board comment, Andrew.
I just want to, guess, thank the staff again for, we pretty kind of talked about it for the write-offs, but I'm still just kind of amazed that such a tiny number. That's just cool, and then all the stories they keep sharing about what the staff does, or the stories they share about things they're doing, and who they talk to, or why they talk to somebody, or why they don't want to talk to somebody when they still do, or, you know. All those kind of things are just good to hear, kind of how that, the effort, but sort of like the deliberate effort that goes on to handle that. Another cool anecdote, overhearing some colleagues of mine talking about, one was getting their generator installed, and one was talking about how nice it is that they have a backup generator system, and of course none of these folks are on light power.
Did you get a chance to tell them that it's nice not needing a generator?
Yeah, and it's just something that you don't really think about until you hear other people say, oh gosh, I'm using it. So one person's like, I've had mine for like 5 years, I've used it so much. I'm like, I've had like one outage for 5 years.
Yeah, the whole town had an outage.
So, again, yeah, it's just, you know, we know we're going in the right direction. You know, I keep talking about the charts. I appreciate your effort on the charts. You know, it helps to kind of help guide us in the right direction, even though we know we're going in the right direction. I think it's good to see all the different trends that we are needing to manage to make sure we don't forget something and allow ourselves to not continue to progress upwards. So thanks for looking into those and your continued efforts in that.
Tina?
I happened to be in Portland Sunday, helping with a graduation party. And somebody walked up to me and said, "You're on the Lowell Light and Power Board." And I said, "Yes, I am." And they said that they wish that they could capture more meetings that that we have filmed here. They're very interested in what we do, and they love that they don't have the lag time of having their power come back on when they lose power. And I asked them, well, where do you live? They said, well, we happen to be north of Lowell visiting grandparents, and they lost power. And I started laughing. I said, well, my house is 806 Lafayette, so why don't you come to my house next time that happens? And we laughed about it, but they were, they brought it to me, and they said that, this is really a premier facility here, guys, and you guys are doing a great job, and your job is not easy. I know it because I'm not the smartest person around, but I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't know if I could handle that front counter that those women are facing. I'm just telling you. And thank you for supporting them and drawing a line in the sand, because that's the first time I've heard in many years that somebody is sticking up for their employees and saying, this is enough, and this is the rules, and if you don't like it, you gotta look elsewhere. So, thank you. That's what I got.
Yeah, I want to echo what Tina just said. And also, congratulations to Lisa on her year number 2.
Yay.
Tim?
Well, I know Tina wasn't here at the very start, and I just want to congratulate her on becoming the new chairperson of the Lowell and Power Board meeting, because you weren't here. You were unanimously chosen.
Perry
So next
stepped down.
month, you're going to go over and sit
You
down.
weren't here.
down?
Perry, yeah.
Perry's not stepping down. You don't
Yep,
have
and
to
he's
go
on
down.
the board. But
Just
we
from the
need
chairperson.
Chairperson. Yeah.
So congratulations.
Yeah.
That's what
That,
you
what
got.
happened is they said, who is not interested in serving, raise your hand. And everybody is paid.
Daniel is the one that wanted it.
And he's vice chair now.
If you don't show up, you get nominated. So, yeah.
No, congratulations to Perry and, oh man, I'm having this crank for now the vice chair.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what happened while you're you're gone. But I did want to talk
Okay.
about a story about this, we have a seasonal up at Lincoln Pines, and a tree branch came across the power lines, went off around 11:30. 6 o'clock that evening, we finally got power back at our camper. Now, it affected probably 250, 300 campers and modular homes up there, so it was kind of a pain that knowing that probably us, we haven't been there in maybe an hour, maybe, because they had to pull some new lines, but still. So
That's a long time.
that's what it's like,
No.
yes. But we were outside on the water, so that's all I got.
So I got a whole list.
I came up there to say one thing.
This whole time.
And some of them are more questions, and maybe Andrew and Charlie can, because I've been, at times when I've been there, robotics. How's that, I mean,
They have a key, they have the waiver, the room's not necessarily 100% ready for them, but I told them they could start moving stuff in when they need it. I've just asked Brian, their coach, that, do what you need to do. We're in the budget this year, we're actually putting access control on some more doors. So as soon as access control goes in, we'll just issue them key cards, and they'll be able to come and go as they need. But right now, they do have a key. Brian is the sole possessor of a key, responsible for it. But they've not moved anything in, but you were there when, that was the last interaction I really had with them, outside of a couple of emails, but.
I know that in that conversation, Al Ekman with the radio wanting an antenna or possibly a little spot to, has that moved forward or?
That's kind of between the robotics and Al at this point. My general thoughts on that were we've made commitments to the robotics team and we need to honor those commitments first. And if we can honor those commitments and additional commitments, then fine. But right now our priority is making sure we honor the commitments we made to the robotics team. I'd love to help out the junior amateur radio group, but I think the two uses are potentially not very compatible. Electronics and building stuff, dust. I'm not sure. I don't know, but I've asked Al and Brian to have discussions and kind of, I want to say not work it out, but have them figure out what could work or could not work before we really looked into if we had space or what we could potentially do.
Office workers, again, so living where I do, I drive by all hours of the
100 times.
day and night, but I drive by Lowell Light and Power office, main office, and I know some are salary or whatever, but it's, I'm not amazed. I just want the public to be aware that, our employees are not necessarily an 8 to 5 employee. Because I go by 8 o'clock at night and here's a particular employee's car sitting there and the lights are on and they're working, they're keeping the lights on in Lowell. So again, I want to just talk about that. Office staff, this last year I don't know if she's still working during the summer, but we had a high school senior. I think it was a great, this particular person was a great addition. I would hope that we could look at furthering, getting another high school intern to be on board with us.
Faith as well has been an amazing addition. Can't say, and it was fun. We talked about it last month. It was the first, and we're going to say it's the first. It might not be. It was the first Lowell Light and Power employee to graduate from high school while employed. Cool. But she's been a great addition. She's got a welcome ticket for as long as she would like. Obviously, she will move on to other ventures in her life, and at that time, we had seen the benefit of having the additional help. And I like the idea of helping to foster some growth through a high school student. This one was not necessarily, this one, I won't say it fell in our lap, but the pieces lined up and it worked out. You know, the next intern could potentially grow into, if we can find somebody that's, you know, aligns with the potential career path, you know, I like the idea of fostering some of that homegrown opportunity, especially at a younger age or an earlier age, so, thank you.
Line worker, again, got here at 5:30 and one of our line workers came in, was pulling in with the truck. They've had, doing a lot of tree trimming. He was just wrapping up his day, and again, he made a point, and the point was to make sure the rest of the board, that they certainly appreciated the July 3rd, having July 3rd off. And I think that again says a lot about our employees. The board, I believe the board treats our employees right, and in return, I believe they respect and appreciate the board as well. RP3 and the APPA journal, whatever, listed RP3 recipients. Bay City was one, Hillsdale,
Marshall.
I asked Charlie to have one of our, Emily does a great job at it, but asked that they would send out a letter to those MPPA members that received the APPA RP3 designation.
It's a lot of, it's a whole sentence of acronyms.
I don't know if there's an industry that has more acronyms than the power industry.
I don't know the story about that, but it's not suitable for me.
But, so yeah, again, I believe, for us to recognize those, I mean, we are currently in RP3, going, and it's when you're on it, it's a 3-year recognition. Ours is up, we're applying for the next 3 years. I think we've had either 6 years in a row, 9 years, I know that.
I think we've been diamond for, 2014 was not diamond, I don't think. And then 17 and 20 were,
Right.
I believe.
Right.
It's a tight threshold too.
Right.
It is a tight threshold.
The other is, you look at the safety thing that Lowell Power signed up for, and you look at the amount, I think it's well worth it, the $12,000 and then 5% increase the next 3 years. It's a 3-year commitment. I think we had, I think Ron Overbeck did a fine job as our safety director and everything. I think this puts us at a next level because we're now getting our safety from a electric standard company, along with being part with Portland and others. I think it's a great benefit. It's a bargain at that cost. I mean, you just can't put a price tag on safety, and I think that's again very, very important. I attended and this goes back a little bit, but I attended with Ryan, got to ride around in the truck when they were doing the big transformer. But what I saw, and I really would like, Ryan's not here, but I really would like to see us film it. And I'll get to what I'm talking about, is so the line crew meets in the morning, and they now have and Casey probably might see it more because he's here, but they have a program on their iPads that they go through a whole safety protocol for that day. Things that they're gonna be doing and things that they check off, and it's was very interesting. So I sat in on that and saw what they had to do and and I think they kind of go around, and it goes back to where you're talking about having different people run the meeting. You know, one day it'll be Ryan that'll be running it, and another day it might be Mark, but Zach, they each have taken turns of running that, and again, it records all that information, and it's a very, I think it would be great for the rest of the board to kind of see what they do with that, or whether that can be one of our so-called instructional items and everything. But I was impressed, and impressed in that they can, if anything should happen or whatever, you can go, it's all recorded, so they can go back to this day and we talked about this and this and this and this, and what are we doing with bystanders? I mean, so this transport, I mean, each day creates a unique set of safety concerns.
So I'll go one further.
Yep.
They do that for every job. It's job specific. So when they were done with the transformer move, whenever they went to the next job, they did another safety tab work.
Yep. Refresh, it's always there.
And
Well, there's different,
Well, it's just-
different jobs, different job
Yeah.
hazards, different controls. But yeah,
and I saw them out, I was doing some work at a customer's up by the cemetery, and we had Oakwood Cemetery, and they had the city had a big tree go down in the road, big pine tree, and they asked if light power could help in removing that whole thing, and low light power did. And at that day, Zach was there with the iPad, and and I just, I happened to be going by, and hey guys, how's it going? And stopped for a second, and that's what they were doing. They had, they were going through all the procedures and everything that they needed to be aware of for that day. So I'd like to see an example of that for the rest of the board to see. I just text, you heard my phone going off, and I didn't know this, but she said, yeah. So on at the old theater, the marquee, you'll see the Congregational Church, located at the Congregational Church, July 18th, there's a block party put on by Gilda's Club, the Congregational Church, and Senior Neighbors. The Senior Neighbors and Gilda's Club has moved to that location. The building, they basically outgrown that building, and again, that's open. She did comment that they are sharing that marquee with Low Light and Power, because Low Light and Power, the theater booked it for both events.
Yeah.
So
Side.
it is going to be it's just coincidence that we talked about it, but if you went by today, I think it was the block party, and I think they're going to take that down, put Light and Power back up for a day, and then you know, for the next 3 or 4, keep switching it back and forth.
What time was the block party?
We could have put it up next week. The survey is open for 8 weeks.
Well, but anyway, that's what they're doing.
What time is the block party?
5, 7?
7.
I,
It's a free
Someone
meal.
reason.
You
it's a
get-
free meal,
Yeah.
my grandson and my wife went around the community day, putting up, at different businesses, little flyers, and it cost my wife, because, you know, taking your 4-year-old grandson into a store and going, I want that, can I get that little, bug carrier or whatever, you know?
Nice bring those.
And it's hard to say no when our grandson lives out in Denver and he's with us. His mom just flew back today. He's with us for a month.
Oh, really? Wow.
It's camp grandpa and grandma.
So let's just see a lot of expenses over it.
The last thing, I don't know, if, it's not necessarily for here, but for the employees, again, having moved their, organization, Gilda's Club, and again, because of Pink Arrow, I'm actively in, Pink Arrow brought Gilda's Club to Lowell, and Tuesday nights, they have a grief, for those on a cancer journey and a grief journey at there, and they put on a meal. And now that one of the big pluses too is the Congregational Church has a commercial kitchen, and again, I know that they're always looking for groups or organizations for, again, our meetings are Tuesday, so it would have to be some other time, but certainly would encourage Lowell Light and Power to provide a meal. You will get more out of it than those that you are serving. Lastly, hopefully, Charlie and I haven't talked about it recently, but we're hoping in August
August 9th.
8th.
8th.
Well, I don't know, I looked it up while we were on there, and their
Oh, yeah,
schedule said
August
August 8th. So there actually has, we're planning on going and attending Zealand's Board of Light and Power Board meeting. I've talked to Charlie, it's something that I wanted to do over the years, is to visit some of the other MPPA members, and just go and watch them, see how they do their meeting, and whether we gain some information. And we talked about it several months ago, but because they had theirs on Tuesdays during the afternoon, and ours again is Tuesday, but it was August 8th was the first one that we could make. So our intentions are, I'm just putting that out there. I just wanted you to know. And again, Craig, if you wanted to ride with us or whatever, be more than happy. I know that, or any of the other board members that would like to go, but I know it's difficult. You know, I'm self-employed. I can set my schedule a little bit easier than a lot of the other board members. So that is full of a whole bunch of things, but if anybody has anything else, otherwise I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Actually, I just want to, thank the board, thank Andrew for, allowing me to take the vice chair position. It's, I'm very clear that it holds no new power. That's fine, but I just, yeah, look forward to being able to be out there in the community and just represent us in that capacity.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn that 3 minutes to 9.
A second.
Been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Wow.
Good turn.